Just comb your hair, go and wash your face. It's been a real long time since you've seen the light of day. So let thoughts come as they may, beauty and parade. Everybody all smiles when you're back in the seat again. All aboard the Petty Express to a beautiful darkness. It's full steam ahead to ride the rails to our next destination. Yeah.
Hey you guys, it's Mo, your conductress on the Petty Express. We are going to finish up day 7. Hopefully we should be able to get it all done, at least a good bit of it, before I have to pick up the kiddos and pick it up at night. But this is kind of going to be our schedule going forward on the Petty Express, because I do have to do chores in real life. So I do need a little bit of a break between mornings with Mo and, anything else, just because, well, it takes all the time in the world. And welcome, Alice G. I'm glad you are here. And so it looks like, again, if you remember from yesterday, we finished up the medical examiners. We are technically still in the state's case. However, if you look up here, the defense is going to file a motion for acquittal. There's going to be a colloquy with the defendant, and then the defense is going to rest. The defense had a whole bunch to say at the opening, but absolutely did not present a defense. Now, I do think that was contingent upon what the medical examiner said at the mic drop last moment yesterday. I do believe that, her stating kind of point blank that any expert that would use the term SIDS is not competent, maybe took the wind out of their sails greatly. So welcome, Jem. Welcome, everyone. I hope you are all staying warm and toasty. It is freaking freezing outside, and maybe that's why nothing looked good in the grocery store. I specifically went in to find food that I would want to eat, because here lately I've just, nothing tastes right. So I wanted to get some food that I would want to eat. And when you're in a big old Walmart and not one item of food looks good, it is kind of like, did I have to go out in the cold to realize that I'm no longer hungry? I was no longer hungry, at my home. And I was okay there. So that's my current drama. I mean, again, it is weird as a former, fluffy sort of child to look at food and have none of it sound appealing. Not even Dunkaroos. I was like, that's too sugary. And then I was like, who are you and where have we ever met? Because, former Mo used to, sugar was its own food group, subdivided in like gummy, chocolate, bakery, ice cream. It was a multivarious sort of thing. But let's get on to this. I am avoiding listening to this defense attorney because he annoys the ever-living snot out of me. But let's listen to him as he claims that the state proved nothing during these, 6 days. Oh, get used to wearing pink one time. I got some Fig Newtons. For some reason, those looked good. But I spent groceries are way expensive. I spent so much money I have no idea what I bought, to be really honest with you. And they're not going to start sound until they're...
So I went ahead and typed it in for 3 weeks. But I've changed it on the original. So yesterday, the state indicated they may have another witness or at least exhibits. And then at the sidebar, I was told that there might be an objection to whatever the exhibit is.
Yes.
So I thought we'd take that up before I brought the jury in and had to send them back out.
Yes, Judge. The state intends to introduce a certified copy of the order from the Circuit Court in Bristol, Virginia, which ordered Hunter Wood involuntarily committed to the mental hospital over there in Marion.
Okay, that is interesting things. I did not realize that Hunter had been involuntarily committed. Again, this is absolutely outrageous. The Hurricane Megan did just absolute redonkulousness, for this man's life. So I love how the defense has been going on and on about how he's in a mental hospital without disclosing that he was involuntarily committed, meaning that he did not choose to go to, intensive rehabilitation therapy, that kind of thing. So again, it's just another one of, I'm sorry, I'm getting oh, for the love of Cheetos, please tell me I don't. Okay, it looked like someone at my daughter's high school, because they were ticked off that they didn't have a 2-hour delay, decided to call in a threat because they're absolute morons. The absolute state of the world, I swear.
There's a copy of the appearance by the attorney over there, the request for evaluation and report to be done, and then there's a letter dated January 10th, 2025, which is from the Southwestern Virginia Mental Health Institute updating the court as to Mr. Wood's status. And like I said, it is I believe, a self-authenticating document. There's a certificate of official record that is attached, signed by the judge of the Circuit Court, Bristol, Virginia.
We have no objection, Judge.
Okay. So what I intend to do, and then after that, do you think you'll have any proof?
No, Your Honor.
So what I'll do is I'll bring the jury in, admit that, and with the next number of exhibit, then you can rest in front of the jury. And then I'll have to send them back out so we can take up some matters out of the present. All right, we'll bring the jury in if we're ready.
Now, I do believe before that, they were working on jury instructions. Now, all of this that I don't believe actually recorded, or at least audio, all of that from 7 hours to 9 hours almost was him reading jury instructions. So if you remember in the Darrell Brooks case, there was like 2 hours of jury instructions because they have to go through each charge. Well, Megan has 19 charges that she is being charged with. My school, they're not on lockdown. They did call us and let us know that everything is okay, and they've got, whoever called in stupidness taken care of. But, it's just like one thing instead of another. Just when I thought I'd have a quiet day with no children people around. That's how they get you. Ooh, Grandma. We need to take a look at this moment she has on here. She has got a situation with some illusion shoulders with baby pearls on them and ruffles around the shoulder hole. Look, Grandma, I'm not a big fan of the ruffles, but if they make you feel smexy, then you rock them. I'm not sure about it. I think that the illusion sleeve would have been great without a ruffle, but I am one to add on everything to everything. So I feel ya.
Everyone stand, please. You may be seated. Thank you.
Is anyone else peeping the Reynolds wrap over here? Did we have like on-site foil comparison? Or is that butcher paper? I can't tell, but it does seem a bit ironical that there is actual like Reynolds wrap foil on there, allegedly. You know what? There are current trials going on. This is sort of the end. So I wasn't shocked that maybe there won't be as many people watching. You know, right now, again, Baker's established himself and you've got other people. This is a fairly new thing for me. So I'm glad that you guys are helping, you know, start out this new kind of program for me. So I am okay with a smaller tour of all VIPs.
All right, Jen will call your name. Oh, wait, before you do that. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday when we left, I gave you certain admonitions. Do any of the jurors have anything to report with regard to those admonitions? If you do, raise your hand. Let the record reflect none of the jurors raised their hand. All right, General.
Judge, at this time, the state would move to introduce what we believe is a self-authenticating document, which is
Yes.
an order from the Circuit Court in the city of Bristol, Virginia, which orders a mental health evaluation on Preston Hunter Wood. It also contains a letter from Southwestern Virginia Mental Health Institute, which is dated January 10th, 2025, which talks about the fact that he has been involuntarily hospitalized at that facility. We would offer that as the next exhibit in this case.
Number 261.
261, I believe.
261, any objection?
No, sir.
All right, that'll be exhibit 261. All right, call your name.
Judge, the state would rest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know you've only been out here for 2.5 minutes, but I'm going to send you with the officer for a few minutes.
Everyone stand, please.
I do feel bad for the jury because they probably don't understand all of these things. I will say that was the one kind of big help that I had is I could kind of explain what was happening in the trials when I was, you know, part of a jury because I watched them like a nerd with you guys, which is great. Look, everyone should watch trials. Look, if I'm going to be petty, I am always aboard the Petty Express myself. So, you know, if I'm going to be here, everyone's invited. But it is probably really dang confusing if you don't know how things work. How I'm sure these jurors are probably like, we just got out here and now we have to go back again, not realizing that the judge has to talk to Megan, see if she's going to be testifying, hear anything from the defense. So there's a lot of kind of minutia that you don't know if you haven't watched trials before, or this isn't sort of your wheelhouse, that I think could be really confusing to the jury. Alice G., I think that him being in a mental facility kind of not against his will, but involuntarily, definitely speaks to the fact that this wasn't a ploy to try to get out of testifying. Because the way the defense sort of presented Hunter not being able to testify was through the father, or at least the defense kind of brought up like, is he really mentally ill or not? Or was this a reason or a way for him to get out of testifying in this case? It does shade it very differently, knowing that it was an involuntary sort of, committal. Again, it takes away that sort of appearance of it being pre-planned or a way to weasel out of, giving testimony.
You may be seated.
Good
Thank you.
morning, Slinky.
Mr. Scott, you have a motion?
Judge, pursuant to Rule 29 of the Rules of Criminal Procedure, I move the court for a judgment of acquittal as to all counts. Just briefly, I'll go through them. As it relates
Well, I mean, you can move for an acquittal, and I can move to say that I look exactly like Halle Berry if you squint into the sun for 3 minutes and burn out your retinas. I don't recommend it, but I will, in fact, look like Halle Berry. For the love of all that. Sarah, I understand this. This is the same kind of logical reasoning that the defense in Chandler Halderson's case took. Again, along with the Chandler Halderson case, there's just too much damn evidence. Kind of goes against your whole the state didn't prove nothing when, we just sat through 6 days of something.
Based on the first 3 homicide counts, the state has failed to prove the cause of death, which is required to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. I understand the burden here is that the state has to prove it in a light most favorable to the state. The court has to look at it from that standpoint. Even when looking at that, Dr. Schmidt testified to various, although she stated that she believed it was a fixie issue, later under cross-examination admitted it could have been a SIDS death. She admitted it could have been a heart issue, or it could have...
Oh, so are you a moron or just incompetent? Why are you continuing to use SIDS when you've learned that SUDI is the new acronym used? I guess you're just going to bitterly cling on to that because you just got your, look, you look like a moron yesterday. So I can see why you're just going to hang out onto it out of spite.
have been a laryngeal spasm that caused
No,
the death.
you said that.
She
They
really
never
couldn't
said that.
Specify the manner of death. When it came to Dr. Malushnik, she testified that she felt like it was asphyxia caused by being placed in the trash can, but ultimately she did answer that she could not conclusively say that the baby was alive or dead before being placed in the trash can. As it relates to count 1 and premeditation, there's no evidence whatsoever in this case of premeditation. So those are the 3.
Yes, I think there is, evidence of premeditation. She started putting out this, I'm having a rough time with Evelyn, I'm needing to work, she laid the groundwork, and premeditation just needs to be in that minute. So let's play along with you, defense attorney, and let's say that she was unconscious or unresponsive due to a rollover accident or something of that sort of nature. The minute she put that foil over her head, knowing it was going to block airway, I contend that that was premeditated, because even if she was unresponsive, she could have, spontaneously started to breathe again. And Megan is not a doctorologist, but continue with your bloviating.
3 murder counts. Aggravated child neglect, the state hasn't produced any evidence that the child was neglected in such a way to adversely affect his health and welfare. Similarly, of abuse, there's absolutely no proof in the record of child abuse. In fact, there is ample proof to the contrary. Both medical examiners testified there was no broken bones. There's no trauma there. There's testimony, I think, from 6 lay witnesses talking about Megan was a good mother, a loving mother. They never saw any signs of abuse. The pediatrician testified that she never saw.
So was Diane Downs and Andrea Yates and that nurse chick who pretended she was talking to Jesus or whatever. Everyone's a good parent until they're not. For the love of all that is holy.
Any signs of abuse, or she was reported under
Howdy.
under the law. So those are my arguments to those counts. As it relates to tampering with evidence, I'll leave that to the court's good discretion. False report, obviously, there is, as it relates to those, there is a double jeopardy issue that the court will have to address if the jury returns multiple verdicts on those. So, but I will leave those for now, but I do move for a judgment of acquittal without further argument. And the same with abuse of the corpse and failure to report a death. I'll move the court for a judgment of acquittal.
So his legal theory about a lot of the charges is that the state didn't prove anything. Now, the lying to police, he is claiming that they are double dipping on charges, but I do believe what the state did is every time she lied to an officer of a different agency and a different person, that counts as a different crime. Obviously, I don't have a problem with that. He is making really, really ridiculous legal arguments as far as I'm concerned. Again, I understand sort of where he's coming from, But I think it's absolutely ludicrous to look at pictures of the trailer, look at pictures of the house, how dirty, filthy, and disgusting it was, and say that she's not at least in trouble for criminal child neglect. You have got to be kidding me.
Jim?
I'm a brief, Judge. Of course, the court reviews this motion in the viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the state. As far as Mr. Scott's argument regarding premeditation, I think the proof's been pretty clear in this case. The child's found upside down, stuffed into a trash can with its head wrapped in a blanket, and then on top of that, there's a substantial amount of aluminum foil. I think that clearly shows an intent to murder. So we would argue that the element of premeditation is at least shown through the physical evidence in this case. As far as the remaining counts showing the cause of death, both medical examiners, their opinions as they came in yesterday were that this was a homicide and that Evelyn Boswell died from asphyxiation. Mr. Scott certainly challenged and threw some other possibilities out there, but at the end of the day, that was their opinion as to the cause.
And basically, what Mr. Scott was trying to have two pathologists whose job is to look at the totality of a situation to make a diagnosis out of that, or a diagnosis of elimination. And what they did is basically they have a healthy child here. They can find no disease processes besides the heart valve defect that, you know, is not super duper uncommon and does tend to, you know, show signs of deterioration to a point where it would be symptomatic and a doctor would notice these, you know, worsening symptoms if it was going to be a problem. So the defense is being kind of obtuse here, but basically two pathologists found a baby for which there were no disease or, you know, defects that they could find why this child would not be alive, other than someone had to act upon this child. And given all the things that they found, asphyxiation is going to be the most likely way that Evelyn perished.
The manner of death, so I believe that the proof has been sufficient at this point to show how the child died and to let
Yes,
the jury make
Slinky, he
decisions on all
does.
the remaining counts.
All right. Of course, as Mr. Scott and General has stated, in viewing the evidence in light of the Rule 29 motion for judgment of guilt, the court's required to view the evidence in the light most positive to the state. And looking at these charges and proof through that lens, with regard to count one, premeditation, I think coupled with the physical evidence of the way the child was wrapped and placed in the trash can, and you couple that with the voluminous amount of evidence where the defendant was giving different stories as to where the child was, as to how the child was doing. When you look at that count in light of statements the defendant was making on social media, the fact that there seemed to be, from the proof, there seemed to be a cutoff date where before that date, the defendant seemed to be very caring for the child, and after that date, it was story after story about where the child was. The defendant appeared to have moved on to other things. And I think when you take all that evidence and a lot most favorable to the state, that the jury would be able to find premeditation. As for the cause of death, both medical examiners stated that in their professional expert opinion, the cause of death was asphyxiation. Again, Mr. Scott did a good job cross-examining those witnesses to introduce other potential theories. But the courts of the opinion, the state, when looking at that proof and a lot most favorable to the state, that they have put forth evidence the jury can consider. So with regard to count one, I'm going to deny the motion for judgment of guilt. With regard to counts 2 and 3, the abuse or neglect, I think you're taking in light most favorable to the state the fact that that child was wrapped and placed in the garbage can. I think the jury can look at that. And I think
I would.
those facts taken along with all the other proof in the case. There was testimony that the child was filthy, dirty, toward the time late November, early December.
I really like that it seems like he's been taking really detailed notes. He isn't saying no for no reason. He actually has a very firm foundation of logic. And I do, okay, for personal vindication, but I do like that his general tallying of the case, you know, what he's observed and the pieces that he's picked out of information are the same kind of pieces of information that you and we've all been talking about during this entire case. You know, she's a good mother until Hunter comes into her life, and then no one knows where to find Evelyn, how she was found, even the environment she was living in.
I know that the one babysitter testified how dirty the child was. We saw pictures of the living condition of that trailer when the gentleman was cleaning it out.
That was
And I think
nasty.
taking all that together, the jury would be warranted in finding abuse or neglect. I think that taking the light most favorable to the state, that those two counts would survive the Rule 29 motion. And I'm going to deny the motion with regard to those two counts. With regard to the tampering with evidence and false report charges, as well as the abuse of the courts and failure to report, when the court looks at all the statements, all the messages, all the social media posts, when you take those as a whole and view them in a light most favorable to the state, I think those are issues the jury can determine and will have to determine. I'm going to deny the motion with regard to all counts for those reasons.
Well, that was an A for effort,
Mr.
D
Scott.
for denied, and F for FU,
First person I
Mr.
believe
Scott.
Will the defendant testify?
Judge, we're prepared to state at this time the defendant will not be testifying.
All right. In that case, we have to go through the Mullin versus State questioning. I'm going to hand this down and let you do that.
Judge, for the purposes of the record, would you like her to come to the,
No, just put the microphone back up on the table for that. We just need to make sure she's recorded. Ms. Ball?
I am not shocked by this. Again, along with the Chandler Halderson case, I mean, this woman has told so many lies. No one's going to believe her as far as if she gets up to testify that she's going to be doing anything but, you know, self-serving statements, you know. So I wouldn't have gotten her on the stand. I think that she does better keeping her mouth shut. I think she did enough talking prior to getting arrested to, you know, well, torpedo any sort of defense. So I'm not shocked that she is not essentially going to testify, and that the defense is really just holding the state to its burden.
Boswell, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Megan, I want to ask you some questions about my representation of you and explain to you your right to testify. I've been representing you for a couple of years now. We've met and discussed your case. You need to answer out loud.
Yes,
Okay. And part of that, I've talked to you about you have the right to testify, is that right?
yes,
And if the jury can't hold it against you if you don't testify, you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you have a right not to testify?
yes,
Okay. And if you decided you wanted to testify, I couldn't stop you from that. Judge Goodwin couldn't stop you. Mr. Harper couldn't. That's solely your decision. You understand that?
yes,
And after consulting with me and looking at the evidence and hearing the proof here in court, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify?
yes, I have.
You want to testify?
No.
I think I covered it, Judge. Approach.
Yeah. Will you have other proof? No. I know it seems like a calisthenics exercise, but we need to bring the jury in. I need to ask you that question in front of the jury, and then you can rest. And then I gotta send the jury out so we can finalize the charge and give the parties time. Because what we'll do, as soon as the proof closes, we'll take a break, and it'll be an extended break. We'll take a break so that I can get the charge finalized, and then what I do is I will make a notebook for each juror so that they can read and follow along as I read the charge to them. It's been my experience, especially after lunch, that fewer of them nod off. They read with me. Plus, it gives them the charge when they go back in to deliberate. Each one of them has a copy of the charge so they can actually look at it and refer to it.
We all got copies of
And that
the
also
copies
gives
of the
you time,
jury
because
instructions.
What I'll do is, once the charge is done and I get the notebooks ready, we'll bring them back, and I will read the charge to the jury up until almost the end. And then I will have you argue your case, and then I will finalize it and send it out to the jury. That's the
Yes, sir.
process going forward. And during this extended break, we'll give you all time to go through your notes, go through the exhibits, organize your thoughts for the closing. Okay? So we need to bring the jury.
Wait a minute. Judge is slick over here. I didn't even realize he had an orange tie on. Okay, sir, I see it. Go sports ball.
And I need to give the curative instructions about
Yes, sir, I was gonna ask about that, I forgot.
I did too.
Everyone stand, please.
Enjoy your last couple minutes of freedom, even though you're in courtroom.
You may be seated, thank you.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one thing I omitted to do a moment ago. Yesterday, during Dr. Malishnik, did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
At the very end of her testimony, she answered a question and then gave what I'm going to call a parting shot that the answer
Don't you dare take the parting shot away from Dr. Malishnik. That was the best part of the whole trial.
was no, and that the baby would have to have been murdered some other way. Y'all remember that? Yes, sir. I'm going to instruct you
I'd have been like,
that last phrase
Your Honor, Petty respects Petty and she slayed. I would have been all extra about it. And I would have let the defense team know, like, I saw her, I believe her, and I disagree with you, you dingleberry.
you're not to consider. That's outside of her expertise. Okay? It's a legal term, not a medical term. Does everybody understand it? Everybody puts that murder in some other way out of their mind. Do not consider. If you can, raise your right hand. Let the record reflect that all the jurors have raised their right hand. Now,
Okay, let's be real. Mo probably could not have raised her right hand because that was epic level of pettiness. And just perfectly timed and a mic drop and walk out. It was awesome.
Scott, the state has rested. Will the defense have proof?
Fit at rest.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, where we are now is the proof is closed, but it is not time for you to begin deliberating or talking about the case. We're going to have to take an extended break because I've got to prepare and finalize the jury charge. And then I'm going to make a notebook for each of you with the charge in it so you can follow along, and you'll have that for your reference while you deliberate. Okay? This will also, what will happen is it'll probably take 45 minutes to an hour. I'll get all the notebooks made. We'll give the lawyers time to organize their thoughts for closing. When we come back, I will hand out the notebooks and I will read you the charge, which will be painful, and I apologize for that, but that's the way it is. And then we'll go straight into.
No, what would have been funnier is if the jury said, Your Honor, we took up a little collection for the doctor. We were worried that you were going to hold her in contempt, but we love her, so, here's some carnations. Like, I love if they would have just said, we all kind of agreed with her though? Question mark?
Or- Okay. So I apologize for the length of the break, but just bear with me. It's necessary. You'll go with the officer.
Everyone stand, please.
Yeah.
You may be seated, please.
Okay, so we don't get to hear anything during this morning break. Court TV hasn't. All right, so here's jury instructions, and then we'll get. I thought we would get closing. So here is you guys' choice. Now we can listen to the hour, and it looks like about an hour and 45 minutes of the charge sheet. This will go through everything that she is being charged with. So it will have the first degree premeditated murder, the child abuse, child neglect, and then the 11 cases where she either tampered with evidence or lied. It's going to have the desecration of a body in there, all those things. In interest of moving right along and hearing the closing arguments, we are going to skip right on past that. So I want you to remember, though, that as we go into the opening or the closing statements, that the jury has already listened to now almost an hour and 45 minutes of jury instructions. I'm not going to skip the closing arguments, but then we get to go straight on to verdict, which I think will be much better than having to not watch nearly 3 hours of jury verdict watch, and things like that. So this is going to be the state's closing. I do want to see, I heard that it is the female Miss Massengill. Again, that last name, dear Lord, I have to be older than 12. Did the closing. And I will say that while she hasn't been my favorite attorney, just vocal quality wise, and that's just a personal thing for me, she has a definite waver of her voice that I find speaks to more timidity and not being as confident in what she's saying. Now, again, I don't know if this is just her normal vocal pattern, but she does have this kind of wavery voice, and she just doesn't sound so confident. And I want her to sound confident. I want her to be a shark. Again, when she's going after Megan, I want her to sound confident and not sound so, wishy-washy. That's my only big issue with her. Also, the fact that it took them forever to just get anything up on the Elmo, but that's, more of a just Mo being ADHD thing. So I hope that she is a bit fiery. I do think that closing arguments is a place to maybe let just a little bit of that disdain show, just a scotch, and really call out the horror of this crime. But let's see what Assistant DA Amber Massengill does. That last name is just never not going to be funny, y'all.
I'm gonna leave this up, if that's okay, Your Honor.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, for the love of Cheetos, is she already messing up with tech?
So we've finally reached the point in trial for closing arguments, and what this essentially means is it's an opportunity for the state of Tennessee to go through, talk.
I already hate this voice. So today what we're going to talk about is like closing arguments. It makes me very uncomfortable when I hear people talk like this because they always sound like they are on the verge of crying. And it really sparks my anxiety because I'm one of those people that don't want people to be upset around me. So this general tonal quality, I can already tell. I'm like, oh Lord, this chick. But let's go.
About the evidence a little bit, reflect on some of the witnesses because it's been a pretty long, almost 2 weeks. The state will go first, then one of the defense attorneys will have an opportunity to go, then the state will go again. And Matt, I'll talk a little more about that in a second, but that's because the state carries the burden of proof. So I think each of you should have a jury instruction pamphlet in front of you. I'm going to ask you if you flip to page number 6. It covers the burden of proof. And it seems like it's a common misnomer for the burden of proof to appear to be higher than it actually is for the state of Tennessee. And don't get me wrong, it is a high burden, and we gladly carry that burden every step of the way. But when you read about reasonable doubt, and that, of course, the burden never shifts to the defense. The burden is always on the state of Tennessee. It is a burden. It's not absolute certainty. It does not require you to say, I don't know 100% what happened. That is not what is required by the law. It is not absolute certainty. It's essentially, can you go to bed and let your mind rest easy? Can you, actually, I'm going to do one other thing real quick. What I'm asking you to do is essentially use your own common sense. That's one of the most important things. Okay. And I'm going to give an example of what I mean by this, if I can.
She didn't have a tripod?
It's like Wheel of Fortune. Okay? My handwriting's not the best though. But you get the idea here. It's like Wheel of Fortune. When you see a contestant on Wheel of Fortune and they know the answer to the phrase or the statement, they don't have all the letters when they see that phrase, but they know what the answer is. And if the state has done that, we have met our burden.
Okay, you guys, I am not going to lie. I kept wanting to try to make the word colon, which I knew didn't make sense with sense, so it wouldn't be colon sense. But for some reason, my brain would only see colon. Also, this would be much more effective if I didn't have to look through you to see it. If she'd had a tripod, I do like this way of explaining reasonable doubt. I think that this is a good way. I just think that it could have been presented more effectively. But I do like this way of explaining reasonable doubt. I was going to say colon sense, but you know.
It's important to note that it's not beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's not absolute certainty. That is not what is required by the law, by the state of Tennessee. So that brings me to some of the arguments that Mr. Scott has made through this trial.
No, I want you to go.
They might be on the
Sorry.
same page. Probably should have written it down.
You have got to be kidding me. You didn't practice this in front of your mirror?
Here it is, page 5. In your instructions, in the second paragraph, it states, statements, arguments, and remarks of counsel are intended to help you in understanding the evidence and applying the law. But they are not evidence. And I beg you to remember that. When Mr. Scott gets back up and makes his arguments, remember that. The things that come out of his mouth and that came out of his mouth during trial, that is not...
I don't know, but I just love this preemptive law. Y'all, I'm not saying he's a liar, but he doesn't have to tell the truth to y'all. I mean, this isn't evidence. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's like dishonest and trying to lie to y'all, but I want you to remember in your head that he is a lying liarton who lies. Again, these are the kind of things that tickle me pink and I find absurdly hilarious. So I doubt that anyone else would start laughing at this point, but this sort of preemptive, like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, just tickles me pink at this point.
Not the evidence. He tried to get you to speculate on so many things during this trial. He wanted to throw out
Oh, we are calling him out by his name already. Wow. I didn't think we were going to go for a tea spilling session, but okay. I'm here for it, ma'am.
strange theories with aluminum foil. He wanted to throw out a term that doesn't even matter anymore, SIDS. That came from his mouth, not either of the doctors, but from Mr. Scott. He's asking you to speculate. That is not evidence. I beg you to only think about the items that were put into evidence, the photographs, the recordings, and what came from the witness stand. Do not let them sway
Okay.
you
I'll do it. I'll be brows of justice. God bless you. And Gesundheit.
from what actually happened in this case. He kept mentioning cadaver dogs. He wanted you to think about that. But if you remember the cadaver dogs, Tommy Boswell, on his property, what did we hear him say? The cadaver dogs didn't even go up there by the playhouse. He wants you to believe maybe the body wasn't there at that time. He's trying to throw you off, but he didn't show anything. There's no proof. There's no evidence.
Oh, he got his feelers hurt. She's like, he's a liar who lies, and he's a snake oil salesman, and he is not even recommended at the temple. Aw, Mr. Scott got his feelings hurt. I would try to dredge up any sort of feeling of compassion, but you've been a total jerk this entire time. So, kind of don't feel sorry for you. And yes, you did try to get the jury to speculate on all sorts of, redonkulousness. So, guilty as charged. Dad, she's calling me a liar. And the judge is like, you two, I'm going to pull this, trial over and no one's getting a Frosty. I love that the, oldest child who's just trying to stay out of trouble is over here like, look, I don't even know these two. I have been over here just doing my notes. Could I please get a Frosty? Like, I haven't even been between these two at all. And, oh, Mr. Scott is mad. Mom, she hit me when I wasn't looking.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you once again, and it's in here in these instructions, but the defendant has no burden to prove anything during this trial. The burden is wholly on the state of Tennessee. Okay? Go ahead, John.
Thank you. And I believe I said that. The state, we gladly carry this burden. But
If you had younger siblings that just could not stop arguing with your parents, like you knew they were losing, they knew they were losing, but both the parent and the sibling had to have the last word, it is the most redonkulous thing you have ever done. I would, again, just look at my brother and my mother both fighting to have the last word and wondering why they didn't just think of all these things in their head. Now, they might not have the myriad of, voices that are inside my head now, but I also didn't, get grounded all the time.
again, what comes out of Mr. Scott's mouth is not evidence. You heard nothing from the witness stand about cadaver dogs. There's no piece of evidence about cadaver dogs. And Mr. Scott said in his opening statement, humans make mistakes. Do you remember that? Dogs also can make mistakes. And if you remember, Agent Fraley and Agent Gratz, both with the TBI, what did they say? They didn't smell anything in that playhouse until they lifted the black bag, and immediately the smell of decomposition hit them. I submit to you, cadaver dogs, what do they work off of? The smell of decomposition. Don't let that fool you.
And if what the agents said was true, that the top bag that was on top of Evelyn kind of sealed or made a seal with the trash can, If it made a seal and made a vacuum, scent is not going to get out of there, or at least not a whole lot. Now, I don't know what the calibration on a cadaver dog is. I only had a dog that could find any sort of meat in the trash can, regardless of, age. But that does make sense to me, again, if you're going by just logic.
Mr. Scott also talked a lot about Hunter Wood. We heard a lot about Mr. Wood in this trial. Again, did we hear any witness from the witness stand that ever saw Evelyn with Hunter Wood? There wasn't a witness that ever saw Evelyn with Hunter Wood. And if you remember the text messages that we saw yesterday from essentially Hunter's own mouth, it's pretty clear that he's yet another victim of Megan Boswell. She was feeding him the same lines that she was feeding every other person in this case. Mr. Scott brought up the theory of an accident, or the word SIDS. Well, you heard Dr. Malushnik say that in the past 10 years, in the state of Tennessee, a child 12 months or older has not passed away from SIDS or sudden unexplained death. Those are statistics from the state of Tennessee. But somehow Mr. Scott wants you to believe that somehow that's how this baby died, even though she has foil wrapped around her head, a blanket wrapped around that, inside a trash bag, upside down, in a trash can. Let's go through our timeline just for a minute. What do we know? We know that Evelyn was okay until November of 2019. We know that Evelyn was seen at Thanksgiving by family. And then Megan Boswell started a new job at the Chicken Shack.
Did y'all check that side eye? Holy crap, that side eye. Also, ma'am, I'm not your hairstylist, and you probably shouldn't trust me with scissors, but get yourself a shoulder length bob with graduated layers, a lot of layers. You have very thin hair. It is doing that weird kind of clumpy thing when you have thin hair. So make it a little shorter, put a lot of dimension in there with layers and stuff, and then you can do all sorts of fun things. I can't help you with your desire to wear florals all the time, but I do appreciate that you're not wearing florals right now. I'm starting to hear righteous indignation, and I like that better than I'm about to cry.
And then Megan Boswell started a new job at the Chicken Shack. What do we know after that? Megan Boswell meets Hunter Wood. And we know that Sue Whitson is probably the last person to ever see Evelyn alive again. You remember the picture that Sue took? This is very likely the very last picture of Evelyn Boswell alive. Not taken by Megan Boswell, but taken by the babysitter. Sue Whitson testified that the last time she babysat was the end of November, early December, which just so happened to coincide with when Megan Boswell met Hunter Wood, a guy that she was hoping might change her life. But Evelyn was in the way. What did we hear? Do you remember Megan's friend, Maddie Broom? We heard a little bit about her. Her brother, Stephen Lawrence, tried to help Megan. She drove her to a few of the interviews. And if you remember, Megan was apartment shopping on December 8th. And on that date, Evelyn was not with her. And so Stephen asked her later, after it's been reported that Evelyn's missing, he says, was Evelyn gone by then? And what did Megan say? Yes, Evelyn was gone by then. So that takes our window from December 3rd, essentially when Megan Boswell started working at the chicken shack, to December 8th. Evelyn Boswell's 12-month well visit. Do you remember that? Scheduled for December 5th. Megan doesn't call and cancel. She just no-shows. And Casey Saltz, the receptionist there, had to reach out and ask Megan, and Megan gave some excuse, I can't remember what it was, as to why she couldn't bring her, so they rescheduled for the next day. Did Megan show up with Evelyn the next day? No, she didn't. I submit to you, that's because Evelyn was already gone at that point. Casey texts Megan again, and Megan has yet another excuse. The appointment's rescheduled one more time for December 11th, and conveniently, Megan then says, oh, I've decided to change pediatricians. And as we can all imagine, when you change pediatricians, we all know that children have vaccine records and all of the things that come with being, especially that first 12 months of life. They've got a lot of appointments and a lot of vaccinations. So it'd be really, really important to transfer that information to the new pediatrician. Did Megan Boswell do that? No, she didn't. They never got a request from another pediatrician. That was just another line that Megan Boswell told to start trying, I say trying, to cover her tracks. We also know that on December 7th, you saw a text message yesterday from a girl named Haley Marie, and that is the very first time that Megan tells the story her dad has her. December 7th. Keep in mind, Sue Whitson saw Evelyn alive for the last time, and then Megan just stopped showing up. And then by December 7th, she's concocted her plan. And it really explains why so much time goes by, because I know that's a question we have all had. 2.5 months goes by, 2.5 months. But now we know. We know why, because Megan Boswell was telling every single person in her family and her closest friends that Evelyn was with her father. So what does a rational person think? Okay, we're glad. I think Tommy even said that from the stand. I was proud of him for stepping up. I was proud of him for stepping up and taking responsibility. But time continues to pass, and you've heard witnesses, and particularly Bailey and Audrey, Megan's closest friends. They were all starting to talk and to think that something doesn't feel right. Just doesn't feel right. But no one could have known how wrong this was at the time. February 2020, finally, Tommy Boswell says, I've had enough. I want to see my granddaughter. Show her to me by tomorrow, or I'm reporting it to DCS. Well, Megan couldn't do that. Megan knew she couldn't do that because she knew where Evelyn was. We all know where Evelyn was. And so Megan did not produce Evelyn that day. And
Thank you
Tommy
so
finally
much.
gets the ball rolling on trying to find this little girl. And they first show up at Hunter Wood's house on the lake in a nice neighborhood. And Megan Boswell's there. But there's no baby. There's no Evelyn. And you remember, the only thing Megan, you remember James Lewis from DCS, the only thing Megan was really able to show was this box from Hunter's bedroom. And you remember what Megan called that box? A memory box. Now, why would you call something a memory box if you are alleging that your child is still alive?
Okay, I have a memory box with all of my kiddos' stuff. I try to save like cards, little things like the ornament things that they do. I do try to save all of those things. I have memory boxes for my kids. So I will have to, fight back just a little bit on the, state's attorney. Now, what you could say is, why have memories for a child or why would you save, memories of a child you didn't bother to report missing? I would ask, what's the sentimentality for a child that, you didn't report missing? So the memory box thing is not, I mean, now in my family, I had what was called a hope chest. My dad made a toy chest for me, and my mom, since he hand carved it and everything, I really didn't put toys in there. I put different things that I maybe wanted to save when I got my own apartment or things like that. So it was a giant memory box. But like I said, I have those in my family for my current ferals, and I'll probably have them for grandchildren. So not super duper crazy.
This is all Megan Boswell had of Evelyn in that house. House that she was trying to show DCS that Evelyn was living in. She couldn't show him diapers. She couldn't show him a pack and play. She showed him one outfit that she held up on a hanger. Not an outfit that Evelyn had ever worn. There was no evidence that a child had ever been in that house. Now I'm going to touch on something briefly. If you remember Paul Durant yesterday, going back and trying to just give you a little bit of a timeline. If you remember, he talked about Ethan Perry in the military because Megan Boswell led him to believe that he was the father, even though he had his doubts. She convinced him that he was the father of Evelyn. We know he was not the father. We know that. And he said she was sharing photos daily, constantly sharing photos. Until what day? Do you remember the date? December 3rd. On December 3rd, Megan Boswell stopped sharing photographs of Evelyn. And she continues to send pictures, but if you remember, Agent Durant he's a smart guy. And so he was able to check her full Facebook extraction. And so she continued to send pictures to Ethan, but they weren't recent pictures. It was just another way that she could try to keep this facade going just as long as she could. Mr. Scott wants you to believe that Megan Boswell had a rough life. She was in foster care. But Megan Boswell was in foster care because of Megan Boswell, because she would not go to school. She went to foster care because she was truant. And when she left foster care, she went and lived with her dad. And of course, Evelyn was a baby at this point. I think the testimony was from February to March of 2019. And then her dad said, I'm going to get her a trailer, set her up. He bought her a brand new car, buys her a trailer. He's giving her everything she needs to raise this child. And she goes and lives with her mommy, her grandmother, from April until October of 2019. And then finally into the trailer from October to December. I think it's fair to say that she did not live in that trailer.
And that is the heartbreaking thing for me, because Mr. Scott, or the attorney for Megan Boswell, can go on and on about how she was a fantastic mom for the first year of her life. And I guess she was a good mom when there were other people around to do the actual parenting, I think. I think that it's a lot easier to be a younger parent when you have older adults around who will pick up the slack. But once she got out to her own trailer, I mean, we saw how disgusting that trailer was just from October to December, and he had to take the subflooring out. I mean, I don't know how gross this woman was on a daily, but how do you get like poo and just grossness caked into the subflooring in less than 3 months? I don't know, but it was gross. I'm sure they are going to show pictures of it, but that in my mind is total child neglect and CA, if you ask me. Making a child live in filth, just gross.
With Evelyn for very long. But in that short period of time, this is what she was able to do to that trailer. Can we look at that for a second? That's what she had her child living in.
I think that's Hunter's house. The trailer was grosser. Or maybe I'm making things up. Still, she's disgusting.
If that's not neglect, she does this in 2 months. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to look at these pictures when you go back in the jury room. That, in 2 months, is what the defendant was able to do to the home her dad provided for her and her child. And within 2 months, Evelyn was dead. And I stated there are, maybe it's just my opinion, there are a lot of victims in this case. Bailey Hawkins, her very best friend. Did you see how difficult it was for Bailey to testify? To look at someone that she trusted, that she loved. Audrey Gibbs, same thing. They are also victims of Megan Boswell. And they will also suffer for the rest of their lives because of what Megan Boswell, the web that she created for them all to get caught in. Erica Stacy, who cared about Megan and Evelyn so much, is a victim. Gail Kite, the foster mother, she's a victim. Ethan Perry, who's serving his country, doing absolutely nothing other than his job, gets pulled up into Megan Boswell's web because Megan Boswell is only worried about Megan Boswell. And I'll submit to you that Hunter Wood, the person that they would like to blame somehow, is also a victim of Megan Boswell. She starts with first blaming Ethan Perry. She does that for a few days. And when she quickly realizes, gosh, law enforcement can figure out that I'm not telling the truth here, I guess I better tell something different, then she goes to her mom. She blames her mom, her own mother. She's willing to blame all the time knowing. I mean, we know, let's find the picture. We know where Evelyn was.
Okay, that's not on me. That would be court TV. Let's hope it comes back here. Siri? Oh, okay.
There she is. Evelyn Boswell sat there in that trash can for 2.5 months. And her mom discarded her, not just Evelyn, but everything that was associated with Evelyn. Everything. Because she didn't need it anymore. Everything. She didn't need that stroller anymore, so she left it behind. She didn't need the clothing. Do you remember all the pictures that came in and all of that stuff that was in that shed? Because she didn't need it anymore, because she knew where Evelyn was. The defense wants you to believe that Hunter Wood is the one that backed Megan's car up to that shed in the middle of the day.
That does not make sense. Again, I am telling you, her family seems a bit clannish. And I mean that in they seem to like the people that they like and know on their property. And if they don't know you, you might get a freedom seed in your behind. So I doubt, even though the fobs are, movable between cars, and Hunter could hypothetically have gone on to, Megan's dad's property, I posit that, Hunter wasn't that interested in Megan to even want to go to his property or her property by himself. And that if the dad ran into Hunter on his property without Megan, he'd ask questions. So that really beggars belief.
Day.
Oh,
In the middle of the day, Hunter's just going to go over.
well, I was listening and trying to deposit a check for Mr. Mo, so I was like, doggone stupid, phone, why do you need to take so long to focus? So I was trying to do that and be quiet, and I am not surreptitious-cool. But I am glad that I managed to deposit the check for Mr. Mo, so one thing done off of my adulting list.
Over there. He has a truck. The testimony was that Hunter had a big truck. Now, why in the world, if he had a truck, I mean, this clearly took more than one trip. I guarantee you. Look at all this stuff.
Welcome, Squid and Raiders.
They want you to
We're on
believe
closing
that Hunter
statements.
Wood backed Megan Boswell's car up to that shed that day. Tawny came home. It was in the middle of the day. Where's the diagram? Do you remember the diagram of the scene?
Not the paper drawing. Y'all couldn't find a Google
Look at
Earth.
this diagram. They somehow want you to believe that
It's
Hunter
a
Wood pulls up
wordish.
this driveway and comes to this shed right here, right in front of Amani's house. Tawny's house, up on the hill, in the middle of the day. Is that reasonable? What is reasonable? How about that Megan Boswell is the one who drove her own vehicle, the vehicle her dad bought for her, up to that shed, because Megan Boswell is the one who had a key fob. Remember, there's a gate there that only opens with a key fob. That's
Swear to God, it was like a map written on a cocktail napkin, and they have continued to use it throughout the trial instead of pulling out Google Maps. They even took drone footage of said property and did not, translate one of those into a still shot that you could see things. Look, I don't know what to tell ya.
It's the only way a car is coming through that driveway. And Megan Boswell lived there. You just heard that she lived at her dad's house and at her mommy's house, and so they're not going to be surprised if Megan Boswell is on the property. She's the one who dumped Evelyn's property there. She's the one who took the trash can there. Not Hunter, not anyone else. Megan Boswell. Do you remember there was more than one text message? And of course, keep in mind, the whole time these text messages are coming through, that's where Evelyn is, okay? Just think about that for a second. I'm not going to take the time to go through these because you can do that. You can take all of this back with you into the jury room. I encourage you to go back and read all of these text messages and remember the dates that we've talked about. But while Evelyn Boswell is sitting in this trash can and people are asking Megan, how's Evelyn? What does Megan say more than once? Mean as fuck. First of all, she's a 12-month-old child. And every other witness said that she was a lovely child to be around. And it's not a very nice statement to begin with, but it's definitely not a very nice statement when your kid is shoved down into a trash can upside down. And you know that. Agent Fraley was on the stand, and you heard Megan Boswell admit that she knew Evelyn was dead. Where she's telling all of those stories to law enforcement. And she told more than one person, Evelyn's mean as fuck. And when Agent Grass asked her about it, she goes, what's your point? What's your point? And that's an interview with Agent Grass that you can also go back and watch if you'd like to do that.
Agent Gratz for Petty Express customers. That was Agent Everything is Awesome or Lego Hair. So that was Agent Gratz. If you wanted to go back and look at his testimony, I was letting you know in our parlance who that was.
So we saw the defendant enjoyed crying during this trial because she has an audience and she really enjoys that. But did we see her crying any other time? Did we see her crying from the witnesses on the witness stand and what they told us about her? Did we see her crying in the evidence that came in? No, Megan wasn't crying. You think she was crying when she filled out this apartment application with Hunter Wood, where they list 3 occupants are gonna live in the apartment. And at first glance, we're like, oh, Megan, Hunter, and Evelyn. But that's not what the defendant told David Gratz. Do you remember what she told him? She said the 3rd occupant is the baby she's pregnant with, because Hunter doesn't want Evelyn to live with him. Of course, we could also look at the date on that application, January 4th of 2020, and we also know another reason that Evelyn would not be living with them. Was Megan crying here? In 2020, when she posts on Instagram, so excited for our new home. Think Megan was crying when she posted that?
Okay, I will say I like her angry mode better, but her shrill, oh my goodness. That is weapons grade shrill right there. So I feel like I'm tone policing this woman, but could you tone down the shrill and keep the angry if possible? Thank you for people who have sensitive ears.
To me, it looks like maybe Megan's just moving on with her life. As if Evelyn never even existed. What about here? Also posted in 2020. Keep in mind, Evelyn's still upside down in a trash can because Megan's not told anyone where she is. She's still spinning her lies. Do you think she sat here when she's picking out furniture for their new house? But she's sad today? She has the gall to sit here and cry today and pretend she can't look at the pictures of what she did to her child? What about this one? Proud of my baby. New 2020 High Country. Was she sad then? What about in December? Weeks after Evelyn has been brutally murdered. What is Megan Boswell doing? Does she look, maybe we should zoom in. Does she look sad here? Maybe she is. Sure doesn't look like it.
Oh shit. Okay, well, I just started talking crap about you, but I do. Petty respects petty, and that was a petty effing move. That, oh, let me just zoom. Maybe I can find the sadness. Interpolate that, bitch. Like, just the way she said it. Again, ma'am, I hate your vocal quality, and it's not you. It's a me thing. I totally get that, but I do appreciate the little snark that we threw in there. And Megan, it's called aloe vera, and that's what you're going to be putting on your burns later on tonight. You're welcome.
Her kid's upside down in a trash can. And she's going to the aquarium with her new boyfriend.
Yeah, that's pretty damning, sweetie.
What about here? She doesn't look very sad to me. Hiking in Blowing Rock in 2020. No Evelyn. Evelyn's missing. Still missing at this time.
So I think what we're learning here is if you accidentally or on purposely make a family member go away and you are grieving them, don't go on vacation with your new boyfriend. This might be situationally specific, but I think this is good, good. Don't, Instagram your crimes. Just for everyone's, edification.
There's Megan hiking with her new boyfriend, moving on with her life. Not crying. Maybe Megan Boswell didn't have an end game. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she hoped that Evelyn would never be found. But she had to know at some point these stories were going to catch up with her. Ladies and gentlemen, and I'm asking you today, 5 years later, February 2025, to show Megan Boswell that her stories have caught up with her. The evidence shows the defendant. This person is the only person responsible for her child being dead. You heard it straight from Dr. Malushnik. Evelyn shouldn't be dead. Evelyn should not be dead. I believe the defense brought up SIDS, reflux, rollover.
Laryngeal spasms is what you're missing.
I believe they even brought up a tongue tie as being a possible cause of death for Evelyn. How does that result? Any of those things. You know, he said in the beginning, the state can't even prove how she died. Are you kidding me?
Denise Sells, at my divorce hearing, the judge said multiple times, this is official today, but don't go get married today or later today or until you have the paperwork in your hands. Didn't think that that would be advice you'd have to give out at a divorce court, but there you go. And that's the problem. Again, if she had truly passed away in her sleep, had she called, the medical examiners, then they could have done a deeper, medical investigation. Maybe Evelyn did aspirate food. Maybe Megan's telling the complete truth. But she also then hid everything and got rid of her child in a way that no grieving parent is ever going to do. Also, it's very clear that after whatever happened to Evelyn, she did not have any emotional response afterwards. True, she didn't go with alien abduction.
How does that end up with a baby in a trash can? The DNA. Let's talk about the DNA for a second. You've got the gloves that are...
Is the judge slipping into full-on middle-age naptosis? Because he looks like he is barely hanging on to consciousness right now. Having dealt with mid-afternoon, naptosis, get you a snack, walk up and down just a little bit, you'll be okay, sir.
In the trash can. And the defense somehow wants you to believe that gloves will keep fingerprints from happening. And then I guess whoever did that then took the gloves off, cut them up because they're cut up in small pieces and you can look at them when you get back there, and then dispose of them in the same trash can that the baby's in. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, it's Megan. She's not an Einstein.
Doesn't make sense. And funny enough, guess what is there? Is DNA that matches Megan Boswell, that matches Evelyn. Go back through the testimony. There's not one piece of DNA, not one, that shows anyone, not Hunter Wood, not anyone else other than Megan Boswell is associated with that trash can, the evidence in the trash bags. And you heard Marla Gray, the DNA expert, talk about the mixture of DNA on some pillows that were found in the shed. And you also heard her say that that could even be from the person who made them in the factory. Or it could be from the person who touched the pillow at Walmart when they were trying to decide if they were going to buy it. It wasn't even enough DNA to test. So don't be led to believe that because of that, there's some unknown stranger who did these things. Look at the evidence. Look at the evidence that's in front of you. We have evidence. We have shown you the evidence. Don't think about the speculation. Don't think about the what ifs. Look at the evidence. Some really, really good. If I could, can I see the trash can for just a second, please?
I'm telling you, that judge looks exactly like Mr. Moe when he's like, I'm just resting my eyes. And about 10 seconds later, I hear... Now, don't rush, ladies. He's all mine. I know you're turned on by that noise. It wasn't in Evan Rude dying. No, it was my husband snoring when he's resting his eyes. So, Judge, you don't fool me. And honestly, her voice is so nasal and shrill, I can't imagine you could fall asleep.
Thank you.
Yes, we are at, it looks
Whose
like we're
fingerprints were on the
close
trash
to
can?
the state closing, or end of first one.
Do you remember what Agent Hoover said from the TBI yesterday? Of course, he's removed the rim. He talked about how it's smooth under the rim. If you're going to carry a trash can, how do you pick it up to carry it under the rim? Whose fingerprints were under that rim? Megan Boswell. Megan Boswell's fingerprints were under that rim. If we look at Exhibit 17, can you see the black trash bag there? Whose fingerprints are on that trash bag? Megan Boswell's fingerprints. And you heard Dr. Malushnik say, and I think you can see for yourself, that trash bag's not just gently placed down into the trash can. It has been forcefully, and it's a hard image. It's a very difficult image to think about. But that's the evidence that we've been left with, that black trash bag was placed on top of Evelyn in the white trash bag, and it was forcefully pushed down. Compressed, I think is a word that was used during the trial. And that's how Megan Boswell's fingerprints ended up on that black trash bag. Even more damning than that is the fact that Megan Boswell's fingerprints are on the foil wrapped around Evelyn's head. I would love to know a different explanation for how Megan Boswell's fingerprints got on that foil.
Oh, don't worry, Chuckles is right here and he's going to have an idea. I will be playing him on 1.25. Look, he has already annoyed the ever-living crap out of me from opening statement, and I can't deal with him. Oh, I'm sorry, Goosey Bumps. You know, I will say that's the reason that Mr. Moe and I don't sleep in the same room, because I am such a light sleeper that I would, make sure that he was still breathing all through the night. Because if you've had anyone that has sleep apnea before they get diagnosed, they'll do this really scary thing where they'll just stop breathing for a couple seconds. And, basically he got a CPAP and moved out of the room because I can't sleep. Yeah, it's horrifying. There was no way that he was, even a great, F. Lee Bailey. I don't think F. Lee Bailey could have made the fact pattern better for the defendant in this case. Now, what he might have been able to do was get her a plea deal, but I don't think even a great legal mind would be getting her out of this. I do think that Mr. Scott tried his best. I do think tonally he was way off bat, and I think made his client even more unlikable than she was with, the fact pattern that, even the, just evidence on the scene would give. I think he made her look more awful with his presentation.
On that trash can, on the black trash bag, except for the fact that she murdered her baby, she put her in that trash can with food trash and debris, covered her body, essentially mummified her, and tossed her away, literally, with the trash. Mr. Scott would like for you to think that the doctor's testimony, just that they shouldn't be able to just decide things in a vacuum. He kept mentioning, well, what if the child's dead on a table? And I think we all know that is not how doctors operate. Doctors operate off of medical histories and any information they can get. And that's what both doctors did in this case. They took everything, her birth records, her pediatric records, the scene itself. before they came to their conclusion. They don't operate in a vacuum. I think those were the words that Dr. Malishnik used, is they do not operate in a vacuum. And they determined what? Both doctors agree that this was a violent
I
homicide.
will. Thank you so much for
That
that,
Evelyn
Karen.
Boswell died from some sort of asphyxiation. So, suffocation, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. So,
Thank you.
if it was not for, say, the position of her body upside down in the trash can, that could have killed her. Well, say it wasn't that. Then maybe it was the blanket that.
And Karen, I will do that today. I took the luxury of Mr. Mo not being home last week to basically barely leave my house. So I do need to get back on my this is a real world schedule, and I will be checking them out today when I go pick up the boys, because in the glamorous world of glamour, I have to go by CVS and the post office. Don't be peanut butter and jealous. I will be doing all of these glorious chores, regularly.
Was pulled up over, remember that? How it was tightly pulled up over her face. That could have been what it was. Or it could have been upside down in the trash can. Could have also been the trash bag that she was placed inside of, where she was unable to breathe. Could have been the foil that was wrapped around her head. Could have been the trash can itself. If you remember, the doctor testified that her face was compressed up against the side of the trash can. And her body was in a reverse S curve, to where her head was so far bent back into a reverse S because of how the defendant compressed her body down into the trash can. Forcefully compressed her body down into the trash can. Her head and neck were wrapped so tightly with foil that even when they removed the foil, you could still see the impression of the foil on her face. You could still see the trash can form still to her face. Quickly, I'm going to ask you to go to your verdict form page. There it is. And it's going to be probably at the very end of your packet. Page 50.
She's like, we've highlighted guilty for you so you don't have to worry about making any choices. Just use your number 2 pencil and your Scantron, and we will be done with this in about 15 minutes. Now, if you were me and you struggled with, again, overanalyzing how you filled out the Scantron, then you might be neurotic. Welcome to the club.
Is where it starts. So these verdict forms, I'm going to show you one example. Okay. So you'll see here, this is just for count 1, and I'm just giving it as an example. We, the jury, find the defendant and mark the appropriate box. So if you go back in the jury room and you agree as a whole that Megan Boswell is guilty of first-degree murder, you do not need to consider anything below that. Those are what we call lesser included offenses, and we're required by law to put those on the verdict form for you to consider. But if you unanimously agree that Megan Boswell...
I do like that they're explaining that, because I think even though the judge kind of explains that, it can be overwhelming. I mean, they have been sequestered for now going on the 7th day. They have had to see the horrible, gruesome images of this case and really had to wade through facts. And they got to see all the pictures. I hope they are getting mental health help and, family support after what they saw. But good night, nurse. I am glad that this prosecutor is making sense of this, because if you've never paid attention to a trial, never looked at it, it is so confusing. And some of the things are so obtuse and kind of just not anything that anyone ever uses beyond court stuff. So I do like that she's explaining this. Again, I would have just highlighted the guilty verdict, and I was like, look, we have taken the liberty to highlight guilty on every single one of your ballots, just so you know where it is.
Boswell is guilty of first-degree murder, you can check that box and move on. You are not required to go through every single one of those if you believe that she is guilty of what she's charged with in that count. And if you go through these, you will see that each count of the indictment is similar. There are lesser included offenses for each one of these. And again, I will ask you that if you can unanimously agree, you do not need to go any further on that verdict form. The state has to prove several elements for each charge, and those are also in your packet. Count 1 is premeditated first-degree murder, that the defendant unlawfully killed the victim, that the defendant acted intentionally, and that the killing was premeditated. The next page defines premeditation for you as an act that was done after the exercise of reflection and judgment. It means that the intent to kill must have been formed prior to the act itself. So that means essentially when Megan Boswell wrapped Evelyn in the blanket, and you think, well, maybe she didn't have premeditation then. She could have formed premeditation in the time where she applied the foil, or premeditation in the time that she put her in that trash bag, or premeditation in the time that she pushed the next trash bag on top of her body. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, there's nothing about this case that is not premeditated. Count 2 and count 3 are what we call felony murder in the state of Tennessee. That's where we allege that a murder happened during a certain felony. And these felonies are aggravated child abuse and aggravated child
He's
neglect.
doing a lot of this.
Again, those go hand in hand with premeditated first-degree murder. We submit to you that not only did the defendant abuse the child, but that she neglected the child. And one of the perfect examples is how she left her in the trash can. That's neglect. Leaving her in the trash can, that's abuse. And it resulted in her death, which is felony murder. Then we have to prove that the child is under the age of 8. There are many counts of false report. Page 29, I think, is where it starts. And it's counts, I believe, 7 through 17. The state must
7 through
prove
18.
that the statement was made by...
There are 11, no wait, she's right, there are 10. They dropped one of the charges, and I can't remember why. I will say that court TV doesn't generally cover kind of the out of presence of the jury conversations between the judge and the lawyers. So that one is a little nebulous, but now at the time of, this particular part of the trial, she does have 10 false statements. Yeah. And I think you're right, Squid Pro Quo. I like this explanation. I feel like sometimes prosecutors can kill their whole case, no pun intended, because they confuse the jury with a verdict form. Yeah, and I think she's going through and really explaining what they have to look for or look through. So that's actually pretty good too.
By the defendant, that it was made in response to a legitimate inquiry by law enforcement, and that it concerned a material fact about the incident within the officer's concern. And if you remember, the defendant herself admits more than once that what she told the police was not true. So I submit that the state has proven each of those counts. Count 19, abuse of a corpse, page 30. The state must prove that the defendant mistreated a corpse in a manner offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person, that she acted without legal privilege and acted knowingly. And I think that count speaks for itself, along with count 20, which is failure to report a death. a lot about this case really has been more about Megan Boswell than about this child, Evelyn. But Evelyn mattered. She deserved to grow up. She deserved that, but her mom took that away from her. And there's no evidence that anyone else was involved. I think you can see this was a pretty good investigation. It was very thorough, and the evidence continued to point in only one direction. The evidence only pointed at one person, Megan Boswell.
Okay, now add New Kids on the Block, 98 Degrees, and NSYNC, and we'd have the perfect boy band clothes.
She failed her daughter. She had the chance to keep her safe, to protect her, to give her to someone else if she couldn't handle her. You heard from the witnessing, there were people that she could have given Evelyn to that would have given her a beautiful life. But instead, she violently murdered her daughter. And she told story after story after story for 2.5 months. And maybe the worst part is that she just went on with her life as if Evelyn had never even existed. But Evelyn did exist. Evelyn is a real person. And Megan Boswell should not be able to go on as if Evelyn did not exist. There are
Let that
things
be your closing.
we will never know about what happened. None of us will ever know everything. I think it's fair to say that we do know that Evelyn was in the way. She was in the way of Megan Boswell living the life that she thought she deserved, that she wanted to live. So Megan removed her. It's as simple as that. So today, 5 years later, almost 5 years to the day that Evelyn was reported missing, we are going to ask that you hold Megan Boswell accountable for what she did for her child. I submit to you the state has proven every count and every element of every count beyond a reasonable doubt. And we are going to ask that you return a verdict of guilty.
Thank you, General. Mr. Scott, you may close.
All right. I'm pushing him to 1.25 because he annoys me and I don't want to hear him talk very long.
Good afternoon.
Now, it does look like we are only subjected to him for 20-ish minutes. So this will be short and sweet, but I'm sure painful to my brain. And why does he stand up there like that? I don't know, but I feel like he's about to get, I don't know, tell me about something in football or be just real bitchy to me.
I appreciate y'all's time. Appreciate you being here. Although I know you may not be here by your own free will, but I still appreciate it. This is a hard case. There's a lot of emotion in this case. And Amber Massengill is very good at giving an emotional closing and wanting you to play on your emotions. The jury instruction.
Interesting. As a woman and keeper of a uterus and firm with all things feeling, I can tell you that she stayed mostly on facts and evidence. Now, she did get upset. She did put a little snark in there. But I can tell you that, and this is girl math, I'd say 78% of that was fact and 13% of that was snark. So I'm okay with that. But, I mean, she's just giving you an emotional argument. Don't listen to them emotions. They're bad for you. Okay, well, what about our brainy bits? Because we don't find any evidence exonerating your client. Have you thought about your emotions?
I will tell you, this case is not about your emotions. It's not about sympathy. It's not about anything else. It's about proof and what's in the evidence. That's what this case is about. This case is more about what Megan Boswell didn't do than what she did do. Now, I'll go back through the witnesses here with you in a minute. But the state seems to be putting forth the theory that you should convict her of first-degree murder because she didn't grieve appropriately.
No, it's not because she didn't grieve appropriately. Her daughter was placed in a backwards S in a fucking trash can. And she didn't tell anyone. She didn't give that baby a proper burial where she could be laid out and put in a beautiful dress and, lovingly sent to the here beyond with her family surrounding her. She got a trash can in the middle of squalor in a Coraline Tim U version house. So shut the hell up. Oh, Grandma's having to cover her mouth or she's going to say the F word.
She had fun after her child died. Now, is it far-fetched to believe that the child died in the first part of December, like she says? No, that seems to be the point where you see Megan's personality start to change. But I would suggest to you that change occurs when the child dies. You start to hear various friends come in and they talk. I can name them for you. Let's talk about Casey Saltz. She worked at Megan's pediatrician. And she was also, technically, would have been Megan's foster sister, I guess. She was the daughter of Megan's foster mother. And she talked about Megan being a good mother. She acknowledged that. She witnessed that. Megan brought her to the doctor. You have an exhibit in the records. It's item 67. It came in through the pediatrician. Read that page for page. It demonstrates that Megan was a good mother, Evelyn. She took her to the doctor for well check. She took her to the doctor when she was sick. She got medicine for her. She did what she should do.
That is the bare effing minimum. That is the minimum. You taking your child to regularly scheduled well visits, for them going to the doctor when they're sick. This is not, above and beyond. This is just parenting. This is just being a parent. And again, she did that all in front of people, and while she wasn't living on her own. As soon as she started living on her own, things went to crap. Again, Evelyn got dirty and disgusting, and I bet you won't bring up, Laser Eyes, the friendly, frenemy that Megan had. Sure, you won't bring up that friend, but okay, sir.
And then she misses that appointment in December. And that's when this starts. And I would admit to you, when all of this really starts, the child is dead. Now, we hear from other witnesses. We hear from Paul Miller. That is Ethan Perry's grandfather. He had no reason to believe that she wasn't a good mother. Seemed like she liked being a mom. Saw no signs of abuse or neglect.
You really want to bring up Ethan Perry's grandfather. You want to bring up the man who lost his wife to what sounds like incredibly painful osteocarcinoma, basically bone cancer. And Megan kept saying that Evelyn, would be around. This woman was fighting in hospice to stay alive so she could meet Evelyn, her supposed great-grandchild. But no, Megan, knew exactly where Evelyn was going to pin it on Ethan, but sure, let's bring her up.
We heard from Audrey Gibbs. She'd been with Megan almost every day up until she moved to Knoxville in 2019. She describes Megan as a good mom. There were a few things. There was once where she thought her diaper needed to be changed, once where they neglected to buckle the car seat. But those are mistakes. That's not child neglect. That's not child abuse. Those are mistakes. Audrey talks about Megan coming to Knoxville up into December sometime, and by that point she acts disassociated. She's not normal. She's saying "I love you" over and over again to her. So, again, maybe she's not grieving right. Bailey Hawkins stayed at the Econo Lodge with Megan. Megan just went to sleep, despite Bailey thought they...
No, Megan didn't stay there. She went home because she has a child. The one that Megan was lying about, this was right when she was giving all those different, interrogations that were basically lies to the police. And Hunter didn't want her back in his house, and no one else around her family wanted her around them because they knew for a fact she was lying. None of these people are good for you. Again, just get up there, say it's about holding the state to their burden. We don't think they proved this, that, and the other. But bringing up these people again only shows and serves to highlight again what an awful person your defendant is.
They might do things, they might talk, or whatever they might do. But she just went to sleep. Again, I would suggest to you she's disassociated. Bailey saw no signs of abuse.
He does
No
look
signs
like it, but I can
of
see
neglect.
his eyes peeping out every
Mr. Horn
once in a
questioned
while.
her. She described Evelyn as the one consistent love that Megan had. And Megan is a girl who comes from a world of fractured relationships. And Miss Massengill wants to downplay Megan's home life. Matt Price did. There's a video in there. He talks about it. He talks about, I mean no disrespect, but I know that Boswell family. I'm aware of them. I know how you come up. Your mom and daddy using drugs. I mean, you want to talk about a home life? Watch the video with Agent Fraley. Her mom was laid in there in stripes, a jail uniform. What kind of home life was that?
Well, her daughter's going to be in a jail uniform too, so aren't they a matching set?
Then we get to Caitlin Jones Carter, whom you can make what you want of her testimony. Her body language tells me she's no longer Megan's friend. However,
The witness was mean to my client because my client is a piece of human garbage. I guess you can just discount her feelings about that.
she described, aside from the one day when she saw Evelyn as dirty, Megan had been a good mother. No signs of abuse, no signs of neglect. She said she saw Evelyn sometime in December. She tried to tie it to her school, but she really couldn't give us a specific date. So I think the best you can say is that it's sometime in December. Gail Kite. Let's talk about her. Megan's foster mom. She gets Megan when Megan comes into her foster care. Megan's 7 months pregnant. She's 17 years old. Gail describes her as looking like she's not pregnant, as being underweight. We know from the medical records and the testimony that came in from Dr. Smith, Megan suffered from intrauterine growth restriction at that time. We've heard that. So that's the shape she's in. But Gail talks about how she gets her in good shape.
KLF, good point. She was not what we like to call subtle. No, them laser eyes were set to kill, not stun. And look, I can be sorry for the little girl that Megan was, not getting a family that put her first and parents that put her first. But if anything, growing up like that should make you want to desire to have exactly the opposite for your children. And I get it. Generational trauma is the most incredibly hard thing to try to stop with yourself or, and not let pass down to children. I get that. But that should have been all that you needed to want to be a different, better parent for your child. And I have known women who have gotten pregnant in high school that their kids are now in college and they are doing just fine. And they didn't have their ish together either. But they knew once that baby got there that was about the baby. Megan, you didn't get that. And I don't know if that wasn't modeled for you as a, human or a person when you were a kid. But that's not an excuse. Once you become a parent, it never is about you again. It's about your child. So, miss me with this noise.
She has the baby. She's a loving mother. She takes care of the baby.
Oh, well, have a good time
Gail never
with
saw
your
abuse, never
company.
saw neglect, never had any doubts about Megan. Erica Stacy, and that's the mother of Megan's ex-boyfriend, and I think his name is, I can't remember his name honestly, but it's the mother of his ex-boyfriend. She described Megan as a good mother. Evelyn was always clean. And I'll point some.
I think the son's name was Caleb or Gabe, but I could be wrong on either of those. But this is the mother that made Evelyn, on her little cricket, her birthday shirt, the little blankie, and I think one or two other things. Again, even after, Caleb and Megan were no longer dating, she went out of her way to give this to Megan for, Evelyn's first birthday. And, made her Christmas gifts too. So there are so many victims in this case beyond, the Boswell family, Ethan Perry, Hunter Woods, just everyone that wanted to be there for this child.
Something out there. The state wants you to believe that Megan just meets Hunter Wood and throws this child away for him. She didn't do that for, I think it's Caleb Stacy. She didn't do that for Caleb. There were others.
Caleb was living with his mother. He didn't have his own car. He didn't have his own house. He didn't have, those on his prospect. That's not hard math to do. But there you go.
Boyfriends. Now there's talk about, a lot of talk about Ethan Perry thinking he was the father. Well, the proof you've actually seen is they go about as Ethan is the father. And there's been no proof that Megan knew that he wasn't the father at that point.
Yarana, my client likes to dabble in what we like to call hoacity. Now, it's not her fault. It's just her natural way of being. So it's not her fault she doesn't know who the baby daddy is. Again, not a defense I'd ever thought I'd hear, but look, Megan didn't even know who the father was. She wasn't lying. She just sleeps around a lot. Okay. I mean, that works. There you go. A for effort.
I'm not trying to, it just happens. Sometimes people may think one person's the father and they're not.
I've been pregnant 6 times, and I can honestly tell you all 6 times did know who the father was. No confusion whatsoever. I mean, I know it just happens now and then. Now, that being said, I have heard people plan pregnancies. Now, I have never seen that in real life, at least for me, but I have heard that people do plan out these things. So there you go. You live, you learn, you find something new out.
But calling him out of anything or anything else. Like, it's not like this didn't start early on that she thought Ethan was the father. She obviously thought a lot of Ethan. She drove to Texas, took Evelyn to see him. Now,
She went on a crazy stalker random 3-day trip with her toddler. Again, not the best mommin out there. She took a random unscheduled trip to a guy who might be potential dad that didn't even know that, she was going to be there. Like, who does that? Driving with children is not easy. Driving with little kids by yourself is not easy. Driving across multiple states to try to remain in life of someone who might not even be the father of your child is crazy.
he did say one thing that kind of struck me a little odd. He acted as though she just showed up in Texas. I suspect, and he finally admitted on cross-examination, that he told her where he was in Texas. You just don't hop in the car and drive to Texas and say, I'll drive around El Paso until I see his car in the parking lot and pull in. That's not what happened. I think he kind of wanted you to think that, but that's not what happened. Let's talk about Randy Wood. Randy Wood is the father of Hunter Wood. The state called him. The state is the one who elicited the information about Hunter Wood being hospitalized. That's the first you hear of him being hospitalized. It's the state. Now, Ms. Massengill wants you to think I have some grand conspiracy theory. I don't. I do have a statement from Evelyn Boswell when she talks to Agent Fraley about what happened in this case. She says, Hunter was there when Evelyn died.
And she's telling the truth then because spirit fingers? Your client has done nothing but lie. Her passport is double, triple stamped from Liar Town. Now, she has never even made it to, like, a country near the truth. And you're saying that, no, in this statement, I swear she's telling the truth. Hunter was there. I super, super swear. I'm being super serial, you guys.
I wrapped her up and I swallowed her. I held her. She kept getting colder as the day went on. I didn't want her to get cold. Hunter took her and he got rid of her.
Now, Hunter, being the badass assassin from Assassin's Creed that he is, left no DNA, used gloves that are notorious for, splitting and breaking apart, but managed to get no DNA, no, at least quantifiable DNA, no fingerprints, nothing on this child that indicates he had any even passing acquaintanceship with her. He might be the best criminal ever.
Now, they want you to believe that that's just impossible. Why did Hunter not give his DNA? Ask yourself that.
Those eyes when he looks into the camera, even he doesn't believe that. And you're going to watch the minute that the truth, well, the fact that he can't even, convincingly lie to himself comes to him. And it's right here in this glance to the camera.
If you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you just let them test your DNA against all the evidence they have? Turns out they couldn't have tested it, probably. But he didn't give them that chance because he had something to hide. Now, his dad said that he was schizophrenic. I asked him, is he schizophrenic and had hallucinations? He agreed with me on that. He also agreed with me when I asked him if he talked about using an aluminum foil or tin
Oh,
foil.
This is the most offensive thing because it's not even a real grasp of what schizophrenia is, but it is taking tired old canards and kind of random, cultural zeitgeist things and trying to equate them with Hunter Wood. Again, schizophrenics have no known, love or thoughts about tinfoil. Yes, it's a caricature we've seen. Someone with schizophrenia does not need aluminum foil. I swear to goodness, this is, again, one of the most ridiculous things that he puts in. And if Hunter used the foil, you're telling me that he didn't leave a fingerprint on there at all, but Megan did. So Hunter is so clinically insane that he was able to do this without getting any DNA anywhere, but also frame Evelyn Boswell. Interesting. Now, I'm not saying allegedly that if everyone sent him tinfoil, that wouldn't be hilarious, but don't do that. That would be mean. And tinfoil's expensive. But this random tangent is worse than even my random tangents that don't lead back to anywhere because I forget halfway through the tangent.
And he said, yeah, he talks about some off-the-wall stuff. Now, ask yourself, who's more likely to wrap that child in tinfoil? The child's mother that has cared for the child, taking care of the child, or the boyfriend who's schizophrenic?
So the boyfriend that no one has ever seen with Evelyn, and how dare you? Again, he wants to use Megan's mental health, and he probably will in, the penalty phase, because as we know, the jury didn't buy any of this bull puck that he's trying to sell. But he is sure as F going to use her mental state to try to plead for her to have mercy and wants to go ahead and try to throw someone who has mental health issues because, they were basically placed as murder suspect in a death investigation for a child that they'd never met. It is absolutely insane. And yes, Neat Scholar, I believe that in infanticides, it does skew slightly on the sex line that mothers tend to unalive daughters more, whereas fathers tend to unalive boys more. But as far as that, yeah, just, what is, I hate this defense attorney's, his whole strategic outline in this case, his whole demeanor, maybe he's better in another case, but he has just been dead awful this entire time.
And I'm not trying to vilify Hunter Wood. That's not been my intention throughout this trial. But Megan's statement is that one of them rolled over on the bed. The young mother may think that. There could have been other causes. When we get to the causes, I guess we can go ahead and we can talk about Dr. Schmidt and Dr. Malusian. Now, Dr. Schmidt asked her about several different things. She's the lady who actually performed the autopsy. And she formed an opinion of homicidal death based on the way the child was in the trash can. But she could not tell you a medical basis for the child's death, other than.
And lack of evidence is evidence. If there was no natural disease process that could be followed, down to microbiological, histological checks of her lungs, as decomposed as they were, they didn't find anything mechanically or even genetically that would mean, they couldn't figure out the cause of death. I am playing it at 1.25 just for him because he annoys me. So I'm trying to get through this quickly.
A diagnosis of exclusion. And a diagnosis of exclusion is simply, we don't know what else is wrong with her, but she must have smothered in this trash can. That's what they want, what she said, essentially. Now, I cross-examined her about a lot of things. I asked her about SIDS. And even though the subsequent doctor didn't agree with it, Dr. Malusic, I didn't ask about something that didn't exist. Dr. Malusic, or Dr. Schmidt knew exactly what SIDS was. We talked about it. We talked about the ages, how we don't know what caused it.
No, it is an antiquated term. Again, it's not a syndrome. Syndromes denote that there are multiple different symptoms and a sort of constellation of issues. That's why complex regional pain syndrome is a syndrome, because it comes with a constellation of variable diagnostic tools and, indicators. All right, we need to power through this. I can't with him. He's just dumb. Now, the current medical term is SUDI, or sudden unexplained death in an infant, and she did go on to explain that with, proper diagnostic and increases in technology and more thorough investigation, that those causeless or, unexplained deaths have gone down to nearly zero. They are able to figure out what has caused the deaths in most of these children. This man is willfully ridiculous.
She answered questions about it. She said, ultimately, she could not rule that out in this case. Just like she could not say with any degree of certainty that the child was placed in the trash can alive and dead.
Did you watch the same
Couldn't say
trial
that.
we did?
She brought up that the
Were
child
you
had
there?
heart valves at least. She admitted under cross-examination that that could have been what killed the child. We talked about.
No, she didn't. She again stated that if that heart valve was deteriorating or symptomatic, that would have been something that would have been documented in the child's well visits and would have shown, a deterioration in quality of life, and would have been something that would have been easily fixed and noticed by a competent pediatrician.
Laryngeal, we talked about laryngeal convulsions. Could that have caused the death of the child?
Not convulsions, spasms. If you are going to put a theory out there, then have the guts and actual, well, I know you're not telling the truth. You're telling a version of the truth, but at least have the, smartness to remember what the hell it is that you're claiming, because I can remember them. And if I can remember them, I know the jury can remember them. So it wasn't laryngeal convulsions. It was laryngeal spasms that you claimed were brought on by GERD. So if I can remember those things kind of verbatim, don't mess with a jury full of women who will remember them verbatim as well.
She admitted it could. Now, Ms. Massengill brought up tongue tie. I brought up tongue tie, I brought up GERD, I brought up an infection she had, because all of those things can lead to the onset of SIDS. That's the research, and Dr. Schmidt agreed with that. Now, I want to tell you something about Dr. Schmidt and Dr. Malusic. I think Dr. Schmidt she was a medical examiner in Johnson City when this happened. Dr. Malusic is not her boss. It's not like she's somehow over her. Dr. Schmidt was the chief medical examiner at the Jenkins Autopsy Center, Forensic Center. Subsequently, for whatever reason, the state sent her report to Dr. Malushnik for another opinion.
Probably because, just like, Dr. Schmidt, there were no clear disease processes by which to figure out how this child had passed away. So maybe they went to someone who specializes in all of the specialties that Dr. Malishnik has, but also has a specialty in CA or child cases and possible child abuse cases, but also has written many dissertations and has a specialty in, infant deaths. So maybe that's why they did that. Denise Sells, that's what I think. If the heart valve was a contributing factor, it was probably, in a stress, it was probably a contributing factor. I don't like attorneys who misstate what was actually testified to. This man has done it egregiously. If you have the facts, if you have a case to defend, then defend the case. But don't sit here and insult my intelligence, everyone else on the Petty Express, and the jurors when they heard the testimony, and know that you are lying straight dead ass to our faces.
Dr. Malushnik only reviewed her report, and she finds that it's a good report. But then she wants to go further and find some type of certainty that child was placed in the trash can. And you saw an exchange between me and her in here yesterday. It went on for 4 or 5 questions. And I kept asking her, Doctor, can you say any type of certainty? What can you?
I love that he's like, the doctor was mean to me, and she wouldn't answer me my question the way I wanted to.
Say about this? Can you conclusively say that child was dead when it was wrapped in a blanket, wrapped in tinfoil, and put in the trash can? She evaded that question. She wouldn't answer that question.
Welcome, Vice Baby. This has been a really hard case, which is why I'm glad we did it on the Petty Express with all the snark and cursey words. This is Tennessee versus Megan Boswell. We are on the final day listening to closing arguments. Megan Boswell is accused of, around December 8th through the 3rd, was officially December 6th was the last time that anyone saw Evan Boswell, a 13-month-old baby who had been just fine. Around this time, her mother, Megan Boswell, starts working at the Chicken Shack and starts a new relationship with Hunter Wood. Now, Megan Boswell has told everyone that Ethan Perry is the father of Evelyn. And people start to notice that Evelyn isn't around anymore and that Megan is no longer with her. Before this, it was kind of said around town that anywhere Megan would be, Evelyn would be. Now, people start asking, hey, Megan, where's Evelyn? And Megan tells everyone that Ethan Perry, the Potentia dad, has her. Now, Ethan Perry, at this time, this happened in 2020, was in the military working full-time, basic training, advanced individual training. So he could not take his, infant daughter or toddler daughter to the barracks with him. So that kind of starts to fizzle out. So then she starts saying that her mother is watching them. And there's many different stories floating around for about 2 months until Megan's father, Tommy Boswell, Evelyn's grandfather, says, look, if I don't see this baby, in the next day, I am calling the authorities. Well, the authorities get called, and for about 17 days, Megan Boswell is telling the Ethan Perry story, which was quickly ruled out by both the FBI, TBI, and local sheriffs. She said that her mother had the baby and just told a bunch of lies. On the 18th day of this search, unfortunately, baby Evelyn was found on Tommy Boswell's property in a dollhouse or a playhouse that only Megan would play with. This was a playhouse built by Megan's grandfather when she was younger. So really, Megan's the only one that would go in there and fiddle with stuff. Heartbreakingly, baby Evelyn is found with basically her arms pinned to her body in a onesie, wrapped tightly in a blanket. Aluminum foil was shoved very tightly around her face. The blanket was then wrapped over all of that. She was placed in a trash bag, put upside down with great force. The viewing or imagery backward S position. Her head was extended to her behind. She was just completely crumpled up in that trash can. Now, basically every single piece of evidence, both physical and circumstantial, does point to Megan. This has been, a long case, but the defense attorney and Megan's story, after all of the stories that she did tell, was that Evelyn passed away either through unsafe sleeping habits or a sudden infant death syndrome, and that Hunter, Evelyn's boyfriend, took, Evelyn and put her on her family's property. That doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons. The defense is got about 10 more minutes. I will say that I have found the defense in this case to be gross. I think that this would have been a terrible case to try to defend for any defense attorney, but he came out and used some of the most offensive arguments. He didn't read the room. And again, a lot of his questions seem to juxtapose the great care and worry and sadness and grief that even the federal agents investigating this case had, versus, Megan going out with her new boyfriend, buying furniture for their new house, applying for an apartment, not listing Evelyn. Basically, she is all the guilties. In my personal opinion, the jury did think so too, but let's continue with this doofus so we can get his closing statements done, and I never have to see him again.
She finally answered that question only after it was threatened she would be in contempt if she didn't directly answer the question. And her answer was, no.
And I think I speak for the entirety of the Petty Express when, Dr. Malishnik, we would have paid your contempt charges fees, and we would have continued paying them.
I can't say conclusively. And then she threw out kind of a parting shot at me as she left. And suggest to you the more accuracy.
There is nothing more attractive than when a man tells you about how his ex-wife was mean to him. Again, sir, talk about the case, not how the medical examiner made you look like like Lionel Hutz off of The Simpsons.
For that parting shot, she said the child could have been murdered some other way. Should have been. The child could have died some other unknown way. That's what the truth would have been. She presupposed that this child
She was mean to me.
The doctor who did the autopsy was very clear she could not conclude that. She said it couldn't be excluded, but it cannot be included. Dr. McLustick come in with a preconceived notion of that's what happened. Now, the state has to prove you cause of death in this case. They have to prove that child was unlawfully killed. They have to prove this wasn't an accident. The proof from Dr. Schmidt leaves open a heart, it leaves open SIDS, laryngeal convulsion, it leaves open all of those things.
It's spasm. Again, if you're going to throw out a medical sort of conspiracy as to how this child died, and you're the one that introduced it, please remember the term you used, because it's irritating.
We don't know what happened. It also left over a rollover, which is what Megan told Agent Frager. And now,
okay, for those of you who don't have children, I'm going to quickly go over an overview of this. As a mom of 6, I can kind of give you this. As far as rollover deaths, it was explained yesterday, but once a child can kind of roll over on their own means or, kick you, Again, anyone who's had the pleasure or unfortunates of trying to sleep with a toddler in their bed, even if you have a California king, that child will kick you off onto the floor and sleep starfish out. Now, the same kind of reasoning goes with SIDS. SIDS is more prevalent when a baby can't, of their own volition, lift their head or reposition themselves. That it was believed for a long time that SIDS were more of a function of almost smothering death because a baby would be in a wrong position. This is why typically young or new parents are told to have their babies sleep on their backs to avoid kind of the head getting, stuffed into a mattress or the bassinet. It's also, that reason why you're not supposed to have stuffed animals, toys, blankets, things like that in bassinets with young children because they do not have the ability to sort of roll over or possibly get those things off of their faces by themselves. You'll see a lot of sleep sacks. Those are the onesies with like the fleece blanket. Those are a lot of things that you're supposed to use now. Evelyn, at 13 months old, was really at the very, very high end of either a rollover death. In fact, it was stated yesterday in testimony that there were no rollover deaths for an infant over the age of 10 months, I believe, in the last 3 years or 10 years. I can't remember for that specific one, but it's been a long time since they had recorded an accidental sleep or rollover death of a child over 6 months. So, yeah, all of this is redonkulous. Let's continue.
Would Megan know for sure that that's what happened? Maybe not. You wake up and you find your baby dead in bed. Could you not come to the reasonable conclusion one of us must have rolled over on it?
No, I can't. And you know what I can't do if I found my child, the unimaginable heartbreak of if I found my child, passed away in the bed I was sleeping with. I wouldn't then go put my child in a trash can. So how about you screw yourself sideways with a cactus, sir? Because that doesn't math.
She's 17 years old. She's not sophisticated. She's had a hard life. She's scared she's going to get in trouble. Hunter Wood's scared that he's going to get in trouble. And that's why she does what she does. Hunter takes the baby to dispose of it. She knows about it. Is that right on her part? No, it's not. Should she have called and reported? She absolutely should. I told you that in my opening statement. Have they proved that she's a liar over and over? They have. Don't deny that. They haven't proved she's a murderer.
Hey, sweetie, I don't want to be like all truthy on you, but that baby had no medical reason as to why she shouldn't be breathing and alive right now, other than the fact that she was found in a trash can. Again, I don't know what the disconnect is. It is like we are ships in the night, but come on now, sweetie. I'm going to need you, bless your heart, let's go.
You have more counts of false report than I can really count. I think there's 11 or 12 of them.
Your client's a prolific liar.
Almost every
Congratulations.
time she's talking to law enforcement, you're considering a count of false report. With the exception of, you're not considering one for the time she talked to Agent Fraley. That's not before you. I would submit to you what happened was, the conversation with Agent Fraley on the 25th of February, almost 5 years ago, that was a breaking point. That's a breaking point where she finally admits Evelyn is dead. She's able to admit to herself. You saw all these pictures she's sending back and forth before that. That's how she's grieving. Maybe she doesn't want to accept that the child is dead. Maybe as long as she keeps talking about it, talking to the media, talking to the police, and saying that Evelyn is somewhere else.
Hey, listen, sweetie, I know you might be able to lie to people that aren't part of the Grief Sucks Club, but let me explain something about the Grief Sucks Club. Now, having lost someone fairly close to me in my early years, in fact, I was only 5 years older than Megan was when I lost my first husband. And I can tell you that, I didn't shove him in a trash can or tell everyone that he was off in Fiji. I didn't, lie to everyone about what happened and say that he was off with his mistress. And I get the old canard that not everyone grieves the same. I grieve with deeply, almost bordering on offensive dark humor and, inappropriate word vomit. I get that. I get not everyone grieves like that. But there's a difference. And if you've actually grieved someone, you would realize that. But A for effort, D for denied, and F for F you, Megan.
Or else she believes that. Maybe that's how she's getting by. You can't judge someone.
I have never tried to solve my grief, though, with an entire shopping spree at the Sailor Moon store, fueled by vodka. So if y'all happen to see that, I am just grieving, and I would like you to tell Mr. Moe and sign affidavits that I am simply grieving when he, gets that giant, oh gosh, what is it? Credit card receipt from the Sailor Moon store. I'm grieving. Don't you judge me. I'm grieving.
For how they grieve. You don't know what goes through their head. You don't know what they were raised with. I've never lost a child. I hope none of you ever have. But how am I to tell someone when they lose their child how they grieve? How am I to do that? Amber can tell you that.
Holy F, but I am detecting a lot of womanly emotions from you. I thought that Miss Massengill was the emotionalish person. I mean, doggone it, you're sounding very fallopian tubey over here. Maybe you can ask Miss Massengill if you need wings or wingless. Again, that last name will never not be funny. And welcome the Wilburns. Just like how someone is getting all Twitter pated.
Oh, she shouldn't have went here. She shouldn't have did that. How does she know that? She's not in Megan's shoes. She's not out there living in that single wide trailer. That's not her life. She's not been raised by drug addict parents, a dad that beats on her mom constantly, and seen that growing up.
Facts not in evidence. You didn't put that into the court case. And I'm sorry that the medical examiner got one over on you, but I'm about to tell you, like I tell my 14-year-old when she doesn't get something from Hot Topic, you have a mean mom. We're going home. You can buy gauges in your ears when you're 19.
She's not seen that. She can't put herself in her shoes. It's not fair to say she murdered her child because she didn't grieve right. I resent it. You should...
That's a feeling. I thought that the state was all about feelings. So far, I mean, you're the only one that I've seen acting like a hysterical 14-year-old girl.
Two. You should look at the evidence in this case. Do they prove the cause of death? That's the stopping point on the homicide counts. They can't do it. They brought two medical examiners in here who contradicted each other. The first one at least had read her medical records. The second one talks about how she is perfectly a healthy child. She ignored everything in her medical records. She didn't talk about it. It was obvious to me. Should have been obvious to you. She hadn't read it. She didn't care. It was her job to come here and convict Evelyn Boswell of murder. If you don't believe that, why would she leave here and say, well, she must have been murdered some other way? She was a biased witness, and she wasn't a credible witness.
I would like to call the wambulance, but I don't care about your feelings. Now, I know that your feelers were hurt, because that was an epic mic drop yesterday, sweetheart, and the jury got to go home with that in their little old heads. But shut the hell up and let's get over with this. Your client is going away forever. I don't know how she got parole, because I wouldn't have that mercy. So.
Now, let's talk about the tinfoil. How can her one fingerprint be on a piece of tinfoil?
Like this ish cooked. Like this ish cooked. You know, if Megan cooked, she considered macaroni and cheese to be a gourmet meal. This heifer was not, getting lard out, making biscuits from scratch, using a cast iron stove or cast iron pan. She wasn't making chicken fried steak. She was not doing anything by scratch. So she did not use foil to cook. This man is testing the Jesus in me, and he's gonna make me say words that are unchristianated.
Can you all see this roll?
Oh, for flip's sake.
Okay, I figured.
Yeah, but then that piece of foil didn't go on a baby's face. Oh crap, I didn't have you on. I'm a semi-professional, y'all. Sorry. Oh, so he's the reject that took it. Sorry, you guys. I could
I'll take
see it.
this one. The next person who gets this is going to get a piece of tinfoil with my fingerprint. That's a possible way. What's another possible way? We've heard that the tinfoil had food and debris on it. And there's food and debris in the trash can. But maybe the tinfoil was already thrown away in the trash can. If it came
Now, I'm just going to rewind. Diddle-oo, diddle-oo, diddle-oo. Didn't he start this closing with all the state has wanted you to do is speculate. The state has been speculating and conjecturating and speculating. And I'm not going to speculate. I have facts on my side. And then the last 5 minutes is, welcome to Speculation Station.
off of a roll like that, whoever got it would have had to reach in there and gotten several pieces. There were several pieces of tinfoil. I believe 4. There should have been fingerprints all over it. 1 fingerprint. 1 fingerprint. It doesn't prove she put that tinfoil in there. Now, what about DNA on the garbage can? I would just about guarantee you, each and every one of you, your DNA is on your garbage can in your kitchen. Your DNA is all over the house. Your fingers. I said DNA.
This man must have never made a baked potato in his life. That was the worst foil, pull I have ever seen in my life. I was not going to make fun of him because I just want him to shut up. And I'm like, let's get through this. But you're right, Jem. He doesn't know how to use tinfoil. He might have to take classes.
Actually, fingerprints. Your fingerprints are all over your house. It's the kind of thing we don't think about, but you touch something, you put your prints. I think that's what you should consider. Probably Evelyn's handprint on the trash can. At some point,
Oh,
I'm thinking, okay,
really? Because yesterday you said there was no way that a palm print about a quarter the size of my hand was, definitely Hunter's. So now you say it's Evelyn's? Interessante. I really wonder what trial you were watching.
I mentioned to you an unidentified palm print on the trash can. Well, I didn't know at the time it was a child's because it wasn't in the fingerprint analysis report. It's not unbelievable.
They lied
that
to
it's a
me.
child's. Now, Ms. Maxengill made a statement. I was a little perplexed with it. The defense wants you to believe that wearing gloves prevents putting fingerprints on something. You heard the fingerprint experts say they can. I think we all know that from our common sense, though. If you cover the fingerprint up, you're not.
Not those particular gloves. And if anyone has dyed their hair, I'm going to tell you how I know that. If you get those cheap, blue nitrile gloves that aren't fitted, they tear like nobody's business. Now, if you get the purple gloves that are slightly thicker, they don't tear. I suggest investing in those if you don't want to have red hands if you dye your hair red. That being said, those are not effective gloves. The ones that were pulled out were paper thin. They are going to tear and break. So assuming you wanted to use those as actual, escape evidence detectors, they're not that great.
I'm gonna leave it on something. Now, let's go back to the statement of Agent Fraley, February the 25th. She's talked to law enforcement over and over. And she talks about how she breaks down. She breaks. It's the breaking point. She admits she's dead. And she's telling them the truth. How do you know she's telling them the truth? Because if she's still trying to lie to them, if she's still trying to confuse them, she wouldn't have said, I don't know where the baby is. It could be at Hunter's, it could be at Tommy's. Why would you say, if you're trying to lie to them, to perpetuate this lie, like Ms. Masseyville tells you, that the baby could be at Tommy's? Why would you do that? Ask yourself that question.
Because
She's
your
telling you
client's a
where the
moron.
baby is. She thinks, I think it could have been left one of these two places, because I want to find it. And you'll have that video. You can watch it as many times as you want to. I hope you will watch it again. You hear Agent Fraley talk about how he'll go to the DA. She's a scared young mother. He understands that.
It's called lying and building rapport and using the read technique in which you mitigate or make it seem like the, defendant, the, suspect had a reasonable, reason to do this. It's not that he personally agrees with her. No, you dum-dum. I know you've been a defense attorney before. Sweetie, this just wasn't your case, was it, sweetie?
Now, I don't have to prove this case to you. I wish I could.
You didn't.
I can't prove it negative. What I can tell you is the state has not proven their case. They've not proven the cause of death. They've not proven that the death was an unlawful killing as opposed to an accident, or some rolling over in the bed in an accident, or some kind of
You're
health-related
welcome.
issue. They haven't proved that. Let's talk about the gloves. I go around in circles sometimes. I hope y'all are following me. I apologize for that. But let's talk about
Like a whirling dervish that's just, balanced on a place of bullshit. Could you just stop? You're about as useful as tits on a bull and twice as stupid looking. Could you stop? You're hurting my brain. I'm going to have to get the Bad Touch doll and say where in the amygdala you hurt me. Because all of your talking points are dumb. And it hurts me. So stop.
those gloves. Ms. Masseyville talks about the criminal tore the gloves up in the trash can. I think if you'll remember back and look through your notes, TBI cut those gloves up for testing. I could be wrong, but I think that's the case. And what do those gloves tell us? Do they match up to anyone? No. But they do match up to an unknown male. There's not enough profile there to match it to someone to specifically identify them, but it matches it up to an unknown male. That's why there's not multiple fingerprints on the tinfoil on the child. Those gloves that match some unknown male. We know it's male DNA. We know that. Finally, let me talk just a little bit about.
Super T, no, I was not aware that Megan's mom was arrested after she left the courthouse to testify. She had outstanding warrants. Look, I am not going to say that the cops / Jerry Springer factor in this general case is not high. This is, in fact, about the most people of Walmart case I have ever seen. But that does not shock me, unfortunately, Super T.
Hunter. There's a text thread, and it's in February. It's between Megan and Hunter. And it appears like Megan's telling Hunter the same story she's telling everyone else. But remember, Megan's told Agent Fraley that Hunter doesn't want his name brought into this. He doesn't want to be involved. He told her not to tell anybody anything about the child. At this point, Hunter, he throws out a name in that text. He talks about Agent Wilhoit. He's been involved with the police. He knows the police are looking at this. This is February the 22nd. You just see that text thread.
Interesting that I remember this distinctly. Hunter knew the name of the TBI agent that was working as one of the leads in the case, Detective Cheekbones, who I thought would make a beautiful drag queen. Again, sir, your cheekbones are awesome. Hunter knew that name because he was paying attention to the case. Megan replied to that, Agent Wilhoit with, "Who is that?" So, how is it that Hunter is more involved in the case about missing baby Evelyn than her mother? Mike, drop that.
Look at those texts. They're self-serving. I'm just worried about the baby. I just want the baby returned safe. That's Hunter and Megan's way of covering Hunter's involvement in this. I'm not saying Hunter killed that child. But I'm saying he did dispose of the child. That text thread, it's a convenient way if you think about it. If you're trying to have proof that you didn't do something, if you start a conversation, start texting it, say, "Oh no, I didn't do that. Look at my text. I texted."
Look, there is not facts and evidence that your client is smart enough to think of this strategery, so I'm going to say X to doubt.
Her, she told me this. It's a convenient thing for him. But he didn't give his DNA. We know that. His dad talks about he went crazy because he was called a baby killer. Maybe he went crazy because of his participation in disposing of that body. We don't know. Everybody seems to agree he had.
Again, the fact that this man is involuntarily committed at this moment because of a schizophrenic episode, and he has spent the entire time denigrating his mental illness, bringing up tinfoil in relation to schizophrenia, which he has done all along this trial, in a gross caricature of how that illness was displayed on cartoons and fucking Futurama. And I love Futurama, but daggone it, it's not a basis for a case, especially involving tinfoil and schizophrenia. None of what he has argued has been proven, and he has spent the entire time talking about speculation from the state, and his entire thing could have been called Speculation Station, The Detour, Short and Painful.
He has went crazy. You saw a document this morning, that's where he's being held out of court over in Virginia to be evaluated to see where he's competent for some crime he's committed. He's up at Marion right now to be evaluated. That's what we know. I hope I've answered your question. I hope my argument has helped you somehow with this case. But what I would say to you, if you have if you have questions about any elements of these crimes, and your questions are not answered to your satisfaction, you have reasonable doubt.
Nah.
If you say, "I don't know how that child died," that's reasonable doubt in the homicide case. I don't think I have much more to say to you. I go to a Baptist church and I hate long sermons. I'm used to it. I think I've been up here for about a half an hour, but I thank you. I pray you come to the right decision. Thank you.
They did, sweetheart, they did. No, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Okay, I gotta tell you, okay, they did come to the right verdict. Now, I know well, from your perspective, that might not be the case, but they actually did. So yay, you got a win. Is that a win for you? And of course, Glamma bringing the evening glam with the pearls, the illusion sleeve, the ruffles added on the illusion sleeve, which I'm not a ruffle fan, but Glamma pulls it off. So let's go to the state's closing. And then I might have to do a short little hiccup at the end. We might have to go over the verdict tonight because we are getting really close to that time where my boys need to be picked up. So hopefully we can power through this.
Thank you, Judge.
I might do it at 1.2 or 1.5.
Ladies and gentlemen, much like Megan Boswell,
Oh, never
Mr.
mind.
Scott seems to have some very convenient explanations for what happened in this case. Lots of things that happened in this case. All of the evidence in this case that points to his client, he's got some sort of explanation for it. But the problem is, in order to buy into this, in order to believe it, you have to believe Megan Boswell. You have to believe that
Nope.
when she spoke to Agent Fraley on the 25th, that she was somehow, for the first and only time in this courtroom, speaking the truth. But I think each of you, as you sit here, know that's not possible. That's not possible.
She
Megan
doesn't know
Boswell
what the
one of those
truth
people,
is.
You used to hear the expression, the truth ain't in 'em. The truth's not in Megan Boswell.
Oh my God. My grandma used to say that. My grandma used to say, the truth just ain't in 'em, baby. The truth ain't in 'em. Okay, now I'm remembering my grandma. All is right with the world. Okay, we're good.
She doesn't know how to tell the truth. Everything that she tells to every person in her life is for
Hi,
some reason.
Christine.
And that reason is Megan's trying to get something out of it. She is a master manipulator. Even at 17 years old, if you sit there and watch those videos, she's trying to play everybody. She's trying to play the law enforcement officers who are interviewing her. She's playing her friends. Every person in her life who walked through that gate and sat up on that witness chair was in some way manipulated by Megan Boswell. Some way. Whether it was about Evelyn, whether it was about how she was going to pay for a babysitter, whether you're the father of my child, whether you're a great-grandfather, whether your wife who's dying of cancer is babysitting the kid. I mean, she knows no bounds. There is no person that she will not manipulate and tell untruths about and to. No one. But Mr. Scott comes in here today and says, hey, come on, ladies and gentlemen, the 25th, you get that. That was
I
the point
approve
at which
it.
She decided, hey, I'm going to be truthful here. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, we know it's not. It was just another story. She was telling law enforcement to lead them some other way. That's all it was. And if you remember, Nathan Gratz testified. General Massengill was asking him the question, when did this first thing about accidents and rollovers, when did that come up? Well, it came up when the police and law enforcement finally said, we got nothing going on here. We got to give her an out. We got to give her something so we can try to find this kid. So they're the ones who suggested it. And then very conveniently the next day.
And actually, that is true. The state is quite correct. In those interrogations, I did pay attention as to, was it Megan that first floated the idea of a possible accidental passing, or were the police the ones that first put it out? And it was, in fact, the police that first threw out, could this have been a rollover? Could this have been a Sid's death? So he does make a good point, and if you go back and look at those interrogations, he's correct. The cops are the ones that basically throw out that theory, and then Megan comes in tearfully, like a couple days later, like, oh, well, what had happened was X, Y, and Z. So
She comes in, and guess what? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry I've been lying to you all for days and days and days now, but now I'm going to tell you the truth. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened. I submit to you, the only time that Megan Boswell may have told the truth about some small portion, if you remember during one of the interviews, Lieutenant Price, who had been very patient with her up until that point in time.
have a
finally
great day,
said,
Mr.
"Come
Coop.
on."
Thanks for dropping people by, and definitely thank you again for dropping your raters in, and hope you have a safe, warm, and toasty day. Stay out of the weather if you can, although I don't think many of us can.
Something happened on December 21st. And she stopped him and corrected him. Remember? He said, no. Something happened before December 21st. Yeah, something did. She murdered her child. That's what happened before December 21st.
Now, I would like to point out, I don't know who mixed his espresso with Monster Energy drink, and I know I have him at 1.25, but this is the most animated that I have seen this particular state's prosecutor ever. Again, this court has been set on mosey and meander. The defense attorney losing his giblets, in the closing statement was about as close as we've come to an emotional outburst. But here, it looks like he's alive and functional. I'm just so proud of him.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I speak further about the physical evidence that ties and shows that Ms. Boswell is the one who is guilty in this case and who needs to be held accountable, I want to take you back to jury selection. Last week when you all were first up here and up there, and I asked you if all of you had brought your common sense with you. And if all of you, as you listened to the evidence in the case, would use your common sense, and everyone agreed that you would. And so I want to remind you of that, and it reminds you to apply that to the evidence that you've heard, the testimony that you've heard in this case. Because the defense wants to say that perhaps, again, speculating, it's a possibility that Evelyn just died one day in early December. And then all of a sudden, Megan engages in this pattern of just totally bizarre behavior that involves wrapping her child in a blanket, tightly pressing her head in aluminum foil, and stuffing her in a trash can, and then engaging in this just convoluted tale to anybody who wants to inquire about what's going on with Evelyn. But it's a remarkable coincidence, isn't it, that all this occurs at the same time that she starts working at the chicken shack. And that she meets Hunter Wood. You know, that Hunter Wood. The one who lives out on the lake in the big house. And remember, this is where Megan's living before December. These are the conditions Megan's subjecting her child to before December. Then she meets Hunter Wood. Big house out by the lake. Dad owns a business that I'm working at. Remember the other things she's telling investigators as time goes on. Needed a break. She's watching 3 kids. Remember, her mom had the 2 other young siblings. Needed a break. Was tired. When did Ethan Perry step up? I've been raising this kid for a whole year by myself. Probably a little bit of truth in there. A little bit of truth. But it's a remarkable coincidence. This kid, Evelyn, natural causes, just dies right at the same time. Apply your common sense in asking yourselves why. Why would Megan Boswell then start on December the 7th? She tells Bailey Hopkins, hey, it's just me. Ethan's grandma has Evelyn right now. December 7th. Remember, she starts Chicken Shack the 2nd. 7th, 5 days. 5 days later. Why does she start telling all these things that are obviously not true? I'm in a custody battle with Ethan. I don't have her. Evelyn's sick. She's got the flu. Can't bring her. Can't bring her up there to get the Christmas gifts. Let you see her. Why does she do that? Why does a mom who, by everybody's testimony, everybody's, her friend Bailey Hawkins told you, I mean, yeah, she wasn't a perfect mom, but she did well. She did well. They all did. I mean, she posted pictures on Facebook, Instagram. Everybody. Her own pediatrician, Dr. Pugh, came in here. Yeah. She's a good kid. We didn't have any concerns. Healthy, meeting milestones, an advanced child. Why does a mom who dotes over her kid, who won't even let anybody babysit, she's so protective of this child? Remember Erica Stacy? I mean, heaven's sakes. I mean, that's an ex-boyfriend's mom who is willing to babysit the kid so that her son can go on dates with her. She won't let her do it. She won't let her do it. She will not let her babysit. That's how protective she is of this child. So why? Why? Apply your common sense. She won't do it because she can't face the truth about what she's done. She can't face that truth. She can't look at that picture. I'm not going to put it back up there for you. She can't face what she's done to that child. Discarding her like a piece of garbage. So she did. She can't face that truth. So she engages in just spinning all these stories to everybody. Everybody that comes with a story, she's deflecting that out because she doesn't want to face that. It is almost unbelievable to me that the defense is still arguing that Hunter Wood had some involvement in this case. I mean, truly unbelievable to me that they're making that
You
argument.
tell them.
That has no credibility, number one. And 2, no proof whatsoever. Not a single shred of evidence has been presented in this courtroom that ties Hunter Wood to anything dealing with the death of Evelyn Boswell. Not one thing. It's all just rank speculation. Oh, well, because he's in a mental hospital, therefore he must have done something. Right? No. How many people walked up there, took that witness stand and said, oh yeah, I remember when I saw Hunter and Evelyn and Megan together. I remember when I saw that. None. Nobody said that. How many people said, oh, yeah, I remember when I saw Hunter holding Evelyn at the chicken. No, again, nobody said that. No evidence, nothing from that witness stand ever put Hunter with Evelyn. She evidently wants you to believe.
Thank you, State, for pointing this out because I was about ready to lose a gasket and I was afraid you were going to be low energy. But it seems you found like whatever Alex Stein coffee you needed to take. So I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job, which is why I'm not pausing.
Again, and I'll put this picture back up there. She wants you to believe that Hunter, and remember her when she's talking to Agent Fraley, that Hunter went over to her place. That's her place. Stayed the night with her and rolled over on the child. He's got a nice place over on the lake, remember. But that's what she wants you to believe. When her breaking point, when she's finally telling the truth. Apply your common sense to that. What else possibly ties Hunter to this case? To Evelyn's body being disposed. Or maybe it's the playhouse over on Tommy's property. No. Again, we know Evelyn is probably gone 5 days after she first met Hunter from working at the chicken shack. But Megan Boswell wants you to believe that he's been able to go onto her property and stick a body in a trash can in a playhouse that was built for Megan Boswell.
Yeah, that doesn't math. Even Cole's math.
Mr. Scott asked you, and I wrote it down. He asked you who was more likely to have left a print on the foil. Well, I'll tell you who's more likely to have left a print on the foil. The person whose print was found on the foil. Megan Boswell. He stands up here, and again, we've got explanations for everything. Well, maybe it was possible she tore a sheet off earlier, and in doing that, she grabbed the foil and left a print. Well, there's no Hunter Wood prints on any of the foil.
And petty respects petty, so that little snark there, sir, was noticed and appreciated. You are welcome on the Petty Express at any time, but don't slouch and don't lean your neck forward to get kyphosis. Let's go. Shoulders back, head up, posture. Come on now.
The bag that's stuffed on top of the body where Evelyn's found. Multiple prints on that. None of them belong to Hunter. They all belong to Megan Boswell.
Shocked Pikachu face. It's almost like he's watching the same trial we watched. I don't know what the defense watched.
He wants to say, and again, it's still beyond my comprehension that we're talking about Hunter Wood here. You know, why wouldn't Hunter give a DNA sample? I don't know. Perhaps because Hunter is being mucked up in Megan's world here. My gosh. Here I am dating this girl, and all of a sudden I got TBI agents asking me about a child that's missing and no explanation for it. Maybe that's why. And again, in this particular case, you heard from Agent Gray, what does it matter? There's nothing that was tested. All those things she testified to yesterday, all of them, all those things I handed up to her that she analyzed, not one piece of them had any identifiable DNA on it that could have been tied back to Hunter. None. Everything was Megan's or Evelyn's or limited profiles. Remember I asked her, like, get everybody in the world's DNA to her. She wouldn't have been able to match any DNA to Hunter Wood. Nothing. Nothing. Everything connected to that body in the trash can comes back to Megan Boswell. And then, let's not forget, in the middle, while all this is going on, February 22nd, Megan's child's missing. They question Hunter. And they have this conversation. And Mr. Scott wants you to believe that this is some kind of contrived thing between Megan and Hunter. But what evidence did you hear there was any sort of contrived conversations going on here? Nothing. Again, nothing. In order to believe that, you've got to believe one person, Megan Boswell. And we know you can't believe her. No. Hunter says, yeah, but where's the baby? I just want the baby to be found safely. What's her response? If she was truly trying to cover this up, a little bit better response would probably be heard. She says, Dad won't let me go anywhere because of the situation. Hunter, I can't disclose stuff to you on here about what TBI is doing. His concern, please assure me the baby will be found and brought home safely. That's not a conversation with someone that you have that has disposed of a body, that has helped get rid of your dead child. That's not a conversation. Hunter Wood is not at play here, ladies and gentlemen. Not at all. Not at all. Defense has also talked to you about these things medical conditions that they questioned the medical examiners about yesterday. Possible things that might have caused Evelyn to just suddenly die of natural causes. A perfectly healthy child. Again, he's asking you to speculate about possibilities. But we don't decide this case on possibilities. And if you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, you didn't hear from just 2 doctors about Evelyn's condition, about what kind of a child she was. You heard from 3 doctors. Her pediatrician testified in this case too. And what did she tell you? Evelyn was a healthy child, advanced, and met all of her milestones. Any concerns about her health? No, her concern was that on December the 5th, she doesn't show up for her year checkup appointment. She's a no-show. That's her concern, not Evelyn's got tongue-tied. I'm concerned maybe she's going to die from SIDS. Not, oh, she's got some sort of reflux going on. I'm afraid she might be at risk to just suddenly die one day. That's not her concern. And remember, Mr. Scott didn't talk about this because you don't want to talk about it. I asked Dr. Malushnik yesterday about statistics. This wasn't just her opinion. These are statistics kept by the Department of Health in Tennessee about the number of kids over 1 year of age who died in rollover deaths. Entire state of Tennessee last year, none. Entire state of Tennessee last 10 years, none. But yet, they want you to believe that's a possibility in this case. She's the first one, ladies and gentlemen, evidently. The first one. No, it's not a possibility.
Ooh. And
You're
the
decide
snark
this
comes
case on
out.
the evidence that you've heard and the testimony you've heard from that witness stand. And the testimony you heard from 2 different medical examiners said this child died from asphyxiation. That's what they told you. Both of them told you that. You said they had contrary opinions. They didn't have contrary opinions. One of them had a little stronger opinion, but they both had the same opinion. They both told you the cause of death, same thing, asphyxia. And all the evidence in this case points to one person alone as being the person who caused that asphyxiation. And that is Evelyn Boswell. This wasn't an accident, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't an accident at all. You've got lots of evidence of premeditation sitting over there in that box. This isn't a little piece of tin foil. This isn't foil like you stick around a baked potato and stick in the oven. You saw it. You saw the photographs. And the foil's in there. Pull it out. It's a big old piece of foil. Mr. Scott wants to suggest maybe it's sitting down in the trash can and somebody pulled it out. Nobody's using that much foil. Use your common sense. And remember the testimony from Dr. Malushnik yesterday about how that foil was applied. That blanket, so tight when they're taking it off, the impressions left on that child's face. The foil, how painstakingly slow they had to pull it off because it was tightly compressed around the child's head. I submit to you, that's premeditation, ladies and gentlemen. That's intent. That's not an accident. Part of this case, ladies and gentlemen, that as Mr. Scott said, is really, it's sad. It really is. It's a tragedy. You think about all those people that you heard testify, how easily all of this could have been.
She almost got a contempt charge. She did sort of leave, and the judge had to give a corrective statement at the end of her testimony. She did confirm that the baby could have, been unalived elsewhere or before she was put in the trash can was as far as she was going to give the defense about, whether baby Evelyn was alive or dead or what was the issue. So she got her parting shot in there. The defense attorney lost his marbles and his giblets and, well, his logical reasoning in the, closing statement about that. But she did not get a contempt charge. She was close, and I do think all of us would have paid her contempt fees, but she did not get a contempt charge.
Avoided. All these people, Bailey Hawkins, Audrey Gibbs, Casey Saltz, Gail Cotty, Paul Miller, Erica Stacy. Any one of those people would have taken that child. All this could have been avoided. But Megan Boswell only cares about one person, and that's Megan Boswell. She started a facade back first week of December after she killed her child. She created this world, this web, you've heard it called. And that's a pretty good description of it. It's a web. It traps and snares everybody that she comes into contact with. She started this facade back then, and it's continued and continued and continued. And she brought it in here to this courtroom in front of you. And she's trying to get you all to believe the rollover, believe the accident, believe my child died of natural causes, and that I just flipped out and engaged in this totally bizarre behavior. But in order to do that, you have to ignore the evidence in this case. You have to ignore the forensics that place her and her alone as the perpetrator of this crime. This case is the very opposite of an accident. It's an intentional and knowing murder of a child. Megan Boswell got rid of Evelyn so that Megan could be Megan. She enjoyed it. You've seen the pictures General Massengill showed you. Hanging out on Blowing Rock, going to the aquarium, Super Bowl party. Megan Boswell sits here in this courtroom today as guilty as she was back in that first week in December. As guilty as she was on February the 18th, when she first came in there to take the harass. James Lewis interviewed her. She acted all surprised. What are y'all going to do? You going to find my child for? What do you do when a child goes missing? Remember those expressions, those questions she threw out there? She sits here in this courtroom today as guilty as she was back then because she never learned the one lesson that we all know, which is that you're responsible for your actions and your choices in life. And she sits here because she refused to learn that lesson. You've heard her interviews. She takes responsibility for nothing. But today is the day that you get to hold her responsible for those actions, for her poor choices and decisions, for her decision to get rid of Evelyn, to dispose of her like a piece of garbage. That's what she did, ladies and gentlemen. She disposed of her child like a piece of garbage. But her poor choices and decisions have a price, and they have a consequence. The state has proven to you over the course of the last week, Megan Boswell was guilty, first-degree murder, a false report, tampering with evidence, and failing to report that death to authorities. And we ask today that you hold her responsible for those poor decisions by finding her guilty as charged.
All right, guys. So I'm going to stop this stream. I do have to go pick up my feral boy children. And then I'm redirecting you to a stream that will start at 3:30, and we will go over the verdict and penalty phases. Megan had the possibility of being sentenced to life without parole or life with the possibility of parole. So we will kind of go through that. And then we will round that up with interviews given by both the state and defense after the trial. And I did pick up I Love You Forever, I'll Like You for Always that book while I was at Walmart today. So we will finish out with a story time because I think we all are going to need it at the end of this case. Thank you all for being on the first ever, trial run of the Petty Express. This is something new I'm trying, so I appreciate you being on this journey with me. I picked a hell of a case, didn't I? Well, I am going to speed out of here so I can go get my feral children and come back and finish this trial with you guys. So I will see you in just a little bit. Be safe, be warm, be toasty, and I will be right back. Thank you guys so much.